opposite. Let's get studious. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Vertical Table. I am Ryan Doyle, and we are doing D20 questions with the soon-to-be famous Matthew Lyle Middleton. He's going to break this thing wide open, ladies and gentlemen. He is doing a study with Woodbury University. He reached out to ask me some questions about D&D and the larger TTRPG community in reference to the OGL business of last year, and I pulled an Uno reverse card and said, well, I want to interview you now because that's fascinating. So yeah, thank you, Matthew, for agreeing to come on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So you will probably do a better job than I. What is like the curiosity behind this study? Like, what is what is the question or questions that you're
Right.
exploring?
So this project started as OGL happened, and I've been a very large fan of Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast and Gary Gygax and everything for a very long time. And so when OGL happened, I had a class at the same time that was a marketing class, and we had to do a PowerPoint presentation. And I forget exactly what it involved, but it was taking theories from other marketing professionals and utilizing them with something that's happening in the current day. And the OGL was happening right at that time. And so I was like, this is perfect. And so what I focused on was OGL versus the community in general, and why the community kind of had the massive backlash that it did. Because to me, at the time, it was fairly obvious. And then my instructor became intrigued by that and was like, wow, that's a really cool thing. And later said, hey, do you want to do like a full paper on this? And I was like, sure. I've never done a research paper on this at this level. This sounds like a good new opportunity. I'll learn new things. I'll get to try out different skills and abilities, and I'll become better as a person. Self-improvement, very good. And then the first step was basically gather up a list of people to interview and just start interviewing. And so I did my best. I probably could have done way better, but I did my best. And I just got to keep improving.
As far as finding people or interviewing people?
Finding people and interviewing. So finding people, I of course I was very timid, so I started with my personal like close groups and checked in with them, and then I kind of expanded outward and was like, well, what am I going to do? I don't feel I've never been someone who like goes onto the forums and talks with a lot of people, so I didn't feel comfortable going onto a forum with literally 0 years of reputation on the forum just to say, hey guys, I'm doing this thing. And like, even like the questions came into my mind is like, do I ask like a GM for permission to do that, or like a mod or anything like that? Like, and then I found out that on YouTube there's this bit on each YouTube page that says like, here, you can put your email here. And I was like, that's a way. And then the first couple emails were terrifying for me, because I was just like, these are people who are like, they're doing this as like a job, and they're like yes, they are sharing bits about like their personal lives, and they're trying to connect with people and all that, but like I'm just a dude doing research. Like it's how many people am I going to get? And then eventually I was able to write up a thing that basically gave the same information every single time, which is like, we're looking for people with about 3 years of experience in playing/DMing to do playing/DMing questionnaires, things like that. And it's more interview style. And some people responded with like, oh yeah, that's interesting, I'll totally do it. Some people didn't respond at all, and some people responded with like, tell me a little bit more about it, and then they decide when they got some more information on it, kind of thing. And then just kind of keep going from there. And of course some people said no. So the 4 types were basically no, yes, tell me more, and then one of the first 2, and then just no responses whatsoever. And there was definitely like a couple week period where I was like, I can do this tomorrow. Shut the laptop and leave and come back later. But eventually I knuckled down and got to send out as many as I could, and we're here now.
Yeah. And I know,
So,
I know we can't get deep into it because it was anonymous. I'm blowing my cover by admitting to have answered to even have spoken to you.
That is thankfully your thing.
Yeah, and I willingly waive my right to I'm not going to tell you what I said, but we changed my voice and everything. No, but it was an option. I should say so. Oftentimes I'm trying to like help folks promote their thing, and like in this format, and like you are not done doing interviews, right? Like people can still reach
No.
out to you with 3 years. You don't have to be professionally spouting your opinion and answering questions about D&D on the internet to participate, right? It's not
No,
3 years
definitely
of
not.
being a
It's
YouTuber. It's 3 years of being running games of
yeah,
D&D.
it's the main focus is running games. It's 3 years as a dungeon master or 3 years as a player.
Hmm.
Well, 3 years as a dungeon master and or 3 years as a player. We have two lists, one for players, one for DMs. But that
Hmm.
3 years is like a single campaign, like 3 years of doing one long-term campaign.
Ooh.
Or you can do like a couple years of like, yeah, we did like 12 or 18 one shots, that kind of thing. The idea was a very long-term campaign over the course of 3 years. You pretty much learn a lot, if not all of the things that are, you're going to be a much better GM at the end of that than you are at the beginning. And by the same token, if you've done like 18 one shots and a couple mini campaigns that were about 6 months each, you're probably at about the same space just because you've had to make new characters over and over and over again, and everybody is like asking questions because they're trying out new mechanics and different things. It's not like the 3 year campaign where Bjorn, the battle hardened, has been playing a fighter for the past 3 years and he's only leveled up axe fighting.
Mm.
Well, it's D&D, so it wouldn't be axe fighting, but fighter. He's only leveled up in fighter. We're in mini campaigns like your friend has had a ranger, a warlock, a druid, a wizard, and each one of those came with their own horrible set of like, what do you mean this spell, this ability you have does what? What are you talking about? And then you of course multiply that out by however many players at the table you have, like probably four or so, and you've pretty much done all of Dungeons and Dragons within the
Except
maybe
there's
not as
always
high level, but
there's the one guy who always makes the same character though.
that thank
So
God for
really,
him.
it's
He's the one
really
that
only like
keeps
three.
you
Yeah,
sane.
that I got you down. But it's interesting. So I'm not super well versed in like statistical analysis, but I feel like if you did limit it to people who have successfully run a campaign for 3 years, you're going to skew the data, because I feel like that's
Yeah,
a especially with whatever COVID and people moving and schedules
100%.
and stuff, you're it's I don't know if it's survivorship bias, but you're selecting a small
Yeah,
subset of D&D people, because like I don't know, I've been playing for years and years. I'm approaching a decade now, and I don't think I've gone 3 years with the same
yeah,
group for sure, but like I also get bored quick.
yeah, 100%.
um
And so that's why the 3 years thing is kind of a vague number. The real
yeah,
focus is like, have you been through the ringer?
three
Is
years of
the
it. Yeah, are you
idea. Yeah, yeah,
experienced? Yeah. So it's interesting. And again, not to reveal too much about your survey or my answers, but I got your email. I thought about it. I actually you were vouched for. I was not the I had heard of you and this research before you reached out to me,
right.
because there are bigger YouTubers out there. I'm not going to hold that against you. Um, and
Shock.
there, I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
And I was like, okay, I kind of like steeled myself to talk about the OGL, because that's typically that's where like the heat is. That's what a lot of people are talking about. And oftentimes I am the nerdiest nerd in the
yeah,
room, right? So I have the most uh I hesitate to say insider knowledge, but like I had a tiny shred of insider knowledge, and like just had paid more attention than like the people down at the local game shop or the people in my online group or whatever. So I was like really prepared to talk about that, and you pretty quickly were like, we like those are facts, like that's not something I need you to answer for me. Like I am looking
yeah,
into like the community's response to it, and I think that was the thing worth studying in retrospect, like actually having gone through the interview with you and like stopping to think about it, and like kind of zooming out to the larger context of like, it's easy to be like, this is my hobby, this is my passion, this is I have financial interests, I'm trying, I'm doing this all day.
yeah.
Like it's easy to be super engaged with it, and then like, my wife is nice and like listens to me, but like is less than interested, and it's hard to it's and she plays D&D, right? So it's like it's hard to find out where the lines are. And now like, there are business classes like studying this, because it is such an interesting moment in time, right? Like I don't think it
Yeah.
is just a one-off. It is actually it represents ramifications outside of just one hobby, one game, one system, one like demographic. Just I mean, from a lot of different perspectives, and I'm very curious, like once the paper is complete, what kind of conclusions you are drawing there. But like, do you have a I don't know, like thesis is the right word, hypothesis? Do you have some sort of like intuitions going in, whether or not
Right.
they're being confirmed or not? Because that's the point of research, right? Is not to like
Yeah.
prove your point, but to like see what's actually out there. But do you have some sort of theory or theories going into it of like what made this special and different and worth researching?
So for me, the as far as personal theories go, this is, this is totally pre any real like analysis of the data.
Mm,
You got to understand this is just me like being like, I think this might be what's going on. The main thing that's kind of come to me is possibly the idea of Dungeons and Dragons is sort of utilized by um, not quite necessarily outsiders, but people who have like a bit of the outsider mentality kind of about them. So you may be like relatively well accepted within your kind of current social group or something like that, but there might be something that you're like, I feel like I'm kind of holding back amongst them. And so I think D&D sort of kind of connects with that due to just the original assumption with this because a lot of people because a lot of people play D&D. Like it's pretty much a more well-known phenomenon at this point. Pretty much anybody can play D&D at this point. But the classical kind of idea was that it was kind of like nerd geek culture sort of thing.
mm,
And so that's like this one group here. And then in more recent time, we've seen the LGBT plus community get really interested in it as well. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And I was talking with some groups about it. There's this idea of perhaps that's that outsiderness is you don't feel you can fully let down your walls and be vulnerable amongst each other, except with like a trusted group. And so Dungeons and Dragons is really great because it's you get a trusted group of about 4 or 5 people, and you're doing these stories, and each one kind of can hit on these ideas of like what the world is like, what you're kind of like doing as a person. And this is all like don't let's not forget like this is a game. Like it's a system. It's a game. You can just be playing a game to play a game, but for some groups it goes deeper into like this is something that like means something to me is like I play is when you play a character, there are moments where you say, but this character would not do this. You can have Rovalt the Barbarian, and Rovalt the Barbarian, it's like, well, you could kill him, and you say, this is a child. He's like only 15. It's his first time wielding a spear. Rovalt is a barbarian warrior of the Northlands. This is not an honorable kill. Rovalt would never kill this person. And that's a different way of stating it, in the theoretical normal D&D, that is an enemy with 12 hit points and has a spear and does +4 to attack. Let's get it.
mm.
Boom. but
XP,
but
XP.
context overrules
Mm,
everything in certain situations. Like we have the classic story about the goblin babies, and what do you do when you've defeated a goblin den and you have the goblin babies, and that the we don't need to get into that. That could take an hour and a half of arguing. And so the my pre look at this is that there is a concept of a little bit of outsiderness, and that contributed to this because as an outsider, truth or not necessary, or maybe not even truth, but trust between you and another person is super important. And so a company having this book that they're selling to you is great until they break your trust.
mm,
Like then it's a like we close all the windows, we shutter, we shut the doors, we're done. There's less connection, and we've seen a portion of that kind of happened as a result of OGL. Was like the I believe the subscriptions went from like here to like here on D&D Beyond. It just
mm,
like immediately started dropping.
mm,
And that's just a small separate bit. There's also just looking at like what the original intent of everything was, and as people talked about, like people have talked about how the original OGL might have not even been a necessarily real document in the sense that we didn't actually need it. It was just like a confirmation on something which was already pretty much legally zoned in as to what was going on,
mm,
but we weren't sure, so they just finalized it and said this is how it's going to be. um, but there's so much more that it could be, and that there is just within anything, because like any two people are wildly different. Your reason for playing Dungeons and Dragons could just be it's a fun time, bro. Like I know that the outsider one speaks to me personally because for me, D&D was how I did a lot of my social life. That
Mm,
was to me like the pinnacle of how I started becoming a more social person was I had something I could actually talk with people about and deal with. And then in the rest of the world, I kind of just was usually just kind of sitting there going like, okay, we're just waiting for the we're like I didn't want to be mean to anybody, but it was a lot of just feeling like I was passing time, that sort of thing.
No, I think that's very insightful. I think that's a powerful intuition. Yeah, I do think I imagine you're going to find it as multiple things, right? That's
Yeah,
like my favorite part of this community and this the hobby, right? Like you said, it's just a game, and I find myself saying that a lot because for some folks it is just a game, right? And
yeah,
like what the beer and pretzels crowd, and like that's me a third of the time, right? I
yeah,
just like roll dice, big number, good. It's an excuse to just like hang out with friends, and like yeah, it's the cornerstone of my social life. I mean, I'm pretty introverted. I think um I would still hang out with people if I didn't play D&D, but I wouldn't hang out with people twice a week
yeah,
consistently, like scheduled, like do just because like what I mean, I think part of that's being an adult with other things going on. But yeah, and those relationships get forged so much deeper because of the trust.
yeah,
I don't want to go too far into the weeds because I we both know we can talk for a long time.
yeah,
Um but situation arose at my table where it was like okay, this is dark and we're going deep with it, and like I checked in with everybody and it was like yep, I was like cool, I'm really glad that like we have this established group and this trust, because like if I was playing with strangers right now, like there's no way
no, no way,
we
no
could
way.
be going to this place right now, because there is that it's immersion, right? Everyone talks about immersion. I'm not sure everybody understands what they're talking about when they talk about immersion, but there's a separation when I play most games, right? Like I don't know, when I mentioned Uno, but like that's not even a great example. But like the barrier between you and your character very quickly diminishes, if not evaporates entirely, if you're doing it right.
Yeah,
You know, the barbarian is not going to be the kind of person to kill this goblin child holding a spear. It's like no, I wouldn't do that. Like that, you become that person, and it is a very it's intimate in a way that few other games, right? Just
yeah,
games are. Um, and yeah, and it is a very community based thing. And for a lot of folks, that community is the 4 or 5 people at the table with them, right? Like it's a community of communities. I mean, you talk about like the overlaps of the Venn diagram, and I do think there's other
yeah,
circles attached to that
100%.
too. But there is a lot of like outsider mentality, like people from the fringes. It's only pretty recently like that the nerds won culture, right? Like
I and not to get too into it, but I would say that in a way they really haven't.
well, you can't be
Sometimes,
it got commodified, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
it definitely it got commodified,
Mhm.
and the very public people are now very into it, but still feel like some people are still kind of left out of that circle. You know, it's like
Um,
we love. It's almost as if they saw like a little guy playing with his thing, and they were like, oh, this is so interesting. He's like, oh, do you guys want to hear about it? And then they just kind of pushed him away and picked up the object and walked away with
this is my I mean, I think you get a lot of
yeah, there's
that
obviously that's not
tribalism.
everything. There's that
Yeah,
obviously that's not everything, but there's always sections of that kind of going on. Is the
that happens. Oh,
um
you liked the last Batman movie named 18 supervillains or like whatever. That like that nerd flex is still is a does it comes from insecurity. It comes from being on the fringes. It's like a defense mechanism.
yeah,
And that's like so like yeah, I'm not saying like nerds are no longer the outsiders because Big Bang Theory happened or whatever like I don't know,
yeah,
whatever
yeah,
cultural
yeah.
touchstone you want to point at. Like it definitely still feels like, at least in America, right? This place is built for extroverts.
Yeah,
um,
well, extroverts and people who are better at like I would say almost making maybe that's not the right word. Well, I'll use it and we'll say it's unfortunate that I can't think of a better word. People are good at making personal demands and requirements because I have found that um there's a part of myself that I never really gave anything for, which was like my personal needs and wants sort of thing. So like if we sat down as a group and they were like, we'd like to meet, when do we want to meet? I would say I can meet on these like 4 or 5 days. And this one day at this one particular time is really hard for me, and I'll be really stressed out and it'll be bad, but I can do it. Inevitably, it would always be that day for some insane reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I got very tired of that and very kind of like frustrated. And so the like over time I started learning like what I considered to be very selfish way of thinking about things. Is now I don't even tell people if I don't have that if I have a stress time slot, I just don't even tell people about that time slot. I just leave that as blank. And I've become a little bit more I wouldn't call it like very rude demanding, but I'll be like, no, this is the way it has to be. Like I lock on and say like this must be this way, and I'm not budging on this. And that's and for a lot of people, they're probably just gonna say, well, that's just being firm, because I'm not talking about being like a jerk about it. I'm talking like that first, like this is a requirement, we just can't go past it, sort of thing. Um,
I think a
and
lot of people find that balance between like
yeah,
accommodation and healthy boundaries challenging. And yeah, it does it does seem like the people who fall on the other end of the spectrum, uh, it's not taking care of yourself is not necessarily selfish,
exactly, but
but
it's super felt it at I mean, it took me a
right,
long time. Like
right.
to tell you how bad it is, I made a character within the last year that was about exploring more of that, and it helped me be more of that person within my daily life.
Mm.
And that, I'm in my 30s. It took me forever to figure this out. That's just unfortunately the way of life.
Yeah, I mean, God, yeah. The next paper, when you're studying psychology, we can get into all of
Oh
that,
yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah.
Because
We've gone
like
a far field.
it's
Apology.
no, that's what this show is about.
Yeah.
I should call it I don't even know, divergence or something.
Yeah. By the way,
Um,
no plans for next paper. That was just a science. That was just a science statement.
nope, nope, nope. You're
Yeah,
here first, folks.
yeah,
We're doing
yeah.
it.
Well, not in
Uh,
psychology. Like, there's maybe like papers. The way papers work is you write a paper, and if it gains some traction and there's some deeper idea to it,
mm,
you can write like a second paper.
mm,
But in my understanding, I'm going to couch everything in that because this is my first time doing one of these. My
of course.
understanding is that you generally don't want to do the same subject material more than like twice every few years,
Hmm.
because if you do that, then everybody just goes, "Oh, he's that guy."
Right.
Like that's all he ever talks about. It's all he ever researches.
Hmm.
Don't bother talking to him because he's only the unless you need to know about the one subject material, it's kind of like a dry well because it's like, well, outside of Dungeons and Dragons, what are your thoughts about, I don't know, like, Libyan climate crisis? And it's like, I can talk about Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, there's arguments for specialization over generalization. If you want to be the
Yeah.
leading scholar on TTRPGs, that doesn't sound so bad to me.
No,
Uh,
obviously not. But it's a question of what do you want? What do you really want to be doing
or
with your time and effort and all
right,
that
right,
kind of
right.
thing? And some people, and it's you just want to make sure you're not too much like forcibly pigeonholing yourself by accident. Because
Hmm.
what was that? Hollywood actors would have trouble with that sometimes. Is
Mm.
they'd be really good at like one role, and then they'd be stuck in that role forever, even though they'd try for different roles and things like that. And some of them would get very frustrated, and they'd have like little they talk about it as their personal issues. And it's just a better way of putting it, it's like if you're the only guy who knows how to fix the copier.
Ooh, interesting. Yes. 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 You
Yeah,
end up being the IT person because yeah, you're the person who's willing to.
yeah, and you don't get paid for it.
Yeah, nope.
You don't get paid extra for it.
Nope, nope, nope,
So
nope,
it's
nope.
much more like that. That's the thing to really worry about
And I
when you
understand that
think
like
about.
you don't want to get to, I mean within academia, right? You don't want to get typecast, but also within like there's a reason that like I have very purposefully like put a ton of books that are not D&D in this
Yeah,
shot here because like you get super passionate about a thing and you get super into a thing and like well, you geek out over a thing and then it's just like well I can also talk about other things. I don't want to but I can.
yeah,
You know
100%. I mean,
uh,
one of the big ones for me is just looking at your thing. Like, obviously, there's the books all there. I can't tell what all of them are, but I would assume they're mostly TTRPG books. But what got me as more than just that was the blue marking on your door. I believe that's Lord of the Rings
Mm,
one.
mm.
And so I was like, something outside of just TTRPGs.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And
the old magic is back there. Yeah, the
yeah,
Hobbit. I was get confused. Get out of the no admittance except party business sign is on there too.
yeah. Yeah, and
Little,
then that wasn't even it wasn't even my assumption that you were just a TTRPG guy, but like when I first met you via this and saw
mm,
that on the background, I was like, that's cool, that's unique, that's an interesting separate thing. And
mm.
then the wall, I was like, and TTRPGs, that I was talking to you about that. Of course that you're gonna have some of those nearby.
But it's interesting because people do like to like plant their flag too. Like
Yeah,
I think it's ego stuff half the time, but like yeah, like this is the best game and the only game and this is the best hobby and the only hobby and like
100%.
I don't know,
I, I
diversify your portfolio.
I think there's
Um,
I think there's an added thing to it of this thing can be the right thing.
mm,
Not that it is, but I think a lot of people get locked into this is the thing that made my life righteous, or that I like when I connect with it, I'm in the right space sort of thing. Because you get some very vehement defenders of certain things, even though there's like a lot of negativity that gets connected with it. And it's hard to distinguish like why would a person fight so vehemently for this? And for some people, it is that true idea of like, this is the thing that gave me like purpose, unity, like so like a family, things like that. There's no way I would necessarily question it and things like that. And then there's other ones who are like, I'm just trying to find a way to make a quick buck, man. So I'm gonna say whatever I need to do to defend this thing. And there's dozens of different camps and everything within any organization. And like you said, I find generally the best thing to do is you want to be like loosely affiliated with a lot of camps and try to pick the things that are the best things,
mm.
but not like go all in on it. You're not go all in, and because it gets too can get too much. And this is coming from somebody who like plays role-playing games as like I I have video games, I have movies, but if I had a choice,
Mm.
I would pretty much only go for TTRPGs every single day, no matter what.
I mean, I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think it's because like there's nothing, there's very little a video game can do that a TTRPG can't. If
Yeah.
for me, like if you have a powerful, or let's say, I don't even think it's like power, like exercised imagination,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a healthy imagination, and there's a ton of things that TTRPG can do that that a video game cannot do. Again, for me, people find their favorite thing, and then it's you quickly go from like I want to share my favorite thing to like but no, you don't understand. This is the
Yeah.
best. This is the best thing, and everyone should understand it. And I think it's a people are it's not easy to understand that not everyone is like you, even within an outsider community, right? Maybe even more so from like the
I
fringes.
I think an even more concerning might not be the best term, but from an additional point of view, it comes the concept of like heroes. Because a hero can be something that you
Mm,
band around as like a fan, and the saying is "don't meet your heroes," and that's because when you meet them, the truth of them might be this completely different thing. It's like yes, they might do the one thing that you love them for perfect to the highest extent of any degree it can be, given some factors. But in the outside world, in the rest of the world, their life could be way different and nowhere near as great.
I think the last
uh,
like 10, 20 years have taught a lot of us to separate art and artist.
yeah, 100%.
Now that everything is out in the open. So it is, yeah, it is this impulse of like, oh, it's just a game because like if you from the outside, talking about this like cornerstone of like community building and self-growth and like learning these life skills, essentially what you were talking about, and like bringing people together who like feel out of place within the larger whatever culture,
Yeah.
um that doesn't make sense to a lot of people who haven't experienced it, but it is very much there. Like this is not just a game. Like I think community is the closest to. I think we talked about this for 45 minutes trying to define what D&D is, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, that's
or
something.
TTRPGs are, right? Like it is more than a game. I think it's a community, but it's a constellation of different interconnected, overlapping communities. Culture maybe comes the closest to it. But it is more than a game, and it's hard. It is hard to talk about sometimes. And I'm interested in, like, because I don't know if you have to define it necessarily, but you're gonna have to tackle that in a exacting language fashion when you, like,
Yeah,
are done
when it's time to
qualitative
write the paper.
analysis. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
when it's time to, the real question is like, what does it all mean, and what and where does it connect? Thankfully, there's some groundwork that's already been done from previous creators. There's a
Mm,
book called Shared Fantasy by, I got it right here. See, it says Gary Allen Fine, Shared Fantasy.
interesting.
And he's got a lot of his own personal theories and things like that on it. I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but it was definitely at least like he has something that is a base work to kind of like go like, okay, well, what do you think is going on
Mm,
here? And he's got some really great and interesting stuff. He talks about certain things that he thinks are, I'm not sure if I'd have to do a second read through. My primary understanding on first read through was that he thought that they were kind of core to what was going on. But when I read them, I was like, this isn't something that I normally see unless like the context of the game is of such that that's a nature. And so
what's that?
in the games that he was playing for his table, he encountered a lot of violence against women, and I was like, that's very confusing because I've rarely seen lots of violence against women in TTRPGs in general. And he said it was like that's kind of the normal, and I was like, interesting. And then as I kind of got further, he explained that one of the games he was playing was of one specific RPG where they were sitting in a portion of the world where one of their main antagonists were the goddess of wisdom and her all-female cadre of like warrior priestesses. And I was like, that sounds like where the violence against women comes from. I was like, that sounds like that's the specific context where this is happening the most.
It's
And then
systemic, yeah.
and I didn't quite get what was going on. And I don't know if that was like he saw this in every game or if he saw it in that game specifically. And that was something where I was like, maybe I would maybe love to talk to them about it at some point and try to get a better understanding as to what was going on. Because in my personal games, like, yes, it happens, but usually that's because like the DMs describe, well, the assassin just ripped out this person's throat. She's going to jump for the window now, and you're like, all right, well, I got to kill that assassin. You're not thinking about what the assassin's gender is. You're thinking, I've got to get rid of that assassin because that's really they just
Mhm.
killed somebody.
I think there's a lot of it's interesting. One, if you're gonna study something, cast a wide net.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
like
Do the
Matthew
best you
here.
can. Well, he his
Don't just
his
write
net
about
was
your game and imagine that
well.
is representative of a larger community.
Well, that's the thing is he tried to just spread it out as much as he could. He described like a few places he went, like a bunch of cons and things like that. He did
Uh,
his best. But this is one of the things that I think gets ends up happening with any paper is you write something and it looks like it's you write it and you present it to the people, and the people can say whether they think that's accurate or inaccurate. And then another researcher can come along at a later date and look at it and go like, okay, wait, I'm not seeing this thing. Maybe there's something else going on here. And the fact of the matter is, wide net is important, but even if you, I know this is going to sound very silly, no matter what you try to do, if you miss one thing, misunderstand something, come to some slightly different conclusion than everybody else, just like you said, like, well, obviously they didn't do blank or they didn't do, like it's where did their flaw come in? And sometimes it's just as simple as when playing this game, they had this understanding. And that was the thing is they did TTRPGs in general. And I think the three they did were like Dungeons and Dragons, Traveler, Empire of the Petal Throne, and like a couple of others. And Empire of the Petal Throne is a extremely complex lore world
mm,
where there's tons of different stuff and things like that. And that was the one where the goddess of wisdom had the all-female warrior thing, and they just happened. It wasn't like they were deliberately going after this thing as a specific goal. It was just in the world, in the spot they were in. This happened to be one of the three main enemies they had to fight. And so like every mission was like, okay, are we fighting enemy type 1, 2, or 3? Like which gods representatives are we fighting at this point?
Hmm.
And the answer is this one. It's like, okay, well, we fight them. We do what we can. Um,
Yeah, I mean, my first impulse when you were saying it was like, how old is that book, right? Because like
oh yeah, yeah.
the
Let me.
culture has changed, right?
Oh yeah, I should bring that up.
There
The
was a
I don't think about this is this is a perfect example. I don't think about that as much. I just kind of go, well, this happened,
Mhm.
and I don't really think about like the context of the timing and things like that. And meanwhile,
because there were dudes out there. Like it was a very, I mean,
yeah,
it is still a male dominated hobby and community, and
yeah, it says it was
uh
published in 1983, so I think
that checks
that's
out.
around the
So
time.
for
Yeah,
the first decade or two, there were a bunch of it was almost all dudes, right? It is still mostly dudes, but it was almost all dudes, and not all of the dudes by any stretch, but like there were a lot of dudes out there who were like, all right, we're gonna kill all these women. They think they're smarter than us, and then they look around and
I
be like,
think they're smarter than us.
right, right. Which, like, I don't know, that's been my personal experience, but
Got it.
and I'm a pretty smart guy, but I
Yeah.
and then they would look around and be like, women really don't like TTRPGs. Their brain, like, there's a Gary Gygax line about how women's brains are different because they're not interested in TTRPGs. It's like,
Yeah,
well,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
maybe if they weren't about, I don't know, you know, maybe there's a little bit less violence against women and sexual assault and weird undertones here, boys, and like it would be
Yep.
a little more of a diverse community.
Speaking of, I
Yes.
apologize. So the first thing is, I think this though is a perfect example of exactly what I was saying. Is like, if I were describe as I described this thing, your response was, well, hold on, there might be a very specific thing to look into, and I just didn't think to do it. And that's how a lot of research, I think, ends up having some of its problems. But it's funny that you bring this up because he talks about women in the game, and one of the things he notices is that most of the women who ended up in the game were there because they had a pre-existing relationship with another person beforehand. And I think, and I haven't done, obviously I need to analyze all the data and things like that, but I don't recall that being the main reason for many of the female players or DMs when they talked about getting into D&D. There was always that they had an interest and that they kind of got into it. So that's an interesting potential difference between this and the other. I still need to analyze.
I missed a
Um,
beat there. So in that context, the women who were there were like people's partners, were like spouses who were like
it
dragged
was like
along. Is
a
it, or
guy. It was like a boyfriend brought her in originally,
uh-huh.
and then she'd stay after she broke up with him, or it was like the wife of
Okay.
another guy. And then like even one woman described. This is talking about the male female thing. Is
Hmm.
it's interesting that you bring it up. Is one woman described in the book that she did not get to play a male character for about 5 or 6 characters, as and they would go like, well, you don't play female, just play guy. And for whatever reason, they kind of pushed against it. But then after about 6 characters, she just made a female character and nobody questioned it. And
Oh,
so
I got that backwards. Okay.
there was someone, it was either her or the researcher made a not necessarily an assumption, but like an analysis. Their theory was that there was like buy-in you had to do to prove you're a real player. Is like for the first 5 or 6 characters, you got to kind of prove yourself as one of us, and then you can do whatever you want. Because he describes
And
a
then you could be female.
yeah, yeah. Well. He also describes another player was playing a dragon at some point. So, and he talked about this idea of like different like levels of influence. I'm conflating a lot of things. My
Uh-huh.
point is that there's this potential idea that there was like you play this thing until you've played enough to understand, and whether that's a good or a bad idea, or whether that was a lie and they had other intentions or anything like that. It's interesting that that seemed to be something that came up, and that's the weird thing is it's hard to for me, it's one of those things where I just read the information and I go like, okay, this is what is being said. It's not necessarily 100% true, but it to me at the very least, it's interesting that after a certain period of time, they then were like, yeah, no, we don't care what you play anymore. But at first, it was you need to play within this bound, and then afterwards, the bound is restricted. And I was like, I don't fully understand and I don't fully get it, but I also get if a guy's first time playing and he has no idea what's going on slap a cleric sheet in front of him and move on. Is a joke.
I am all I okay, so like the gamer side of me, I am all for like you can't unlock this. You unlock you don't start with a wizard. I say it all the freaking time. Even
Absolutely.
cleric's a little dicey, right?
Right,
Like
100%. But if
do
they
a
say, I
martial, do a
really,
rogue or
really,
something.
really want to do magic,
I'll
please, you'll go like, fine, but you're gonna have to
it's
you
more
just
work
see
for
what
you.
it's like.
But like I just imagine these, there were so
It seems very weird to me that gender would matter. That it's such for the
and
game,
that's a
it's such a flip coin decision.
and
That's
that's
like,
as someone who's like slightly older than you, that's I think that's a product of context. You don't know what you don't know, right? And you
mhm,
coming out and admitting that and making that part of your process of like learning things
yeah,
is tremendous and is again we were talking about this like ego protection nerd armor thing of like no I'm the smartest person in this room today.
yeah.
That is it requires some personal growth, whether it happens at the game table or elsewhere, to admit that you don't know everything, especially when that's your highest stat, right? I'm an int-based character. Int is my thing, right? Like I feel
Yeah.
like I didn't decide, but somebody rolled bad on my charisma or strength or whatever, archetype you want to play. Um, but so I don't love it. We don't like acknowledging it because it's kind of like a bad stereotype,
Right.
and is no longer the norm. But I think it was the norm for a long time, and I know it still exists because I've seen it. These guys are like, look, you can be anything in this world except for a woman because I don't really know how to talk to them. So you have to be a
So I
man
don't
for
really know how to
six
talk
years.
to them. That's
Like that was it was a
uh
long time ago in some measures, but like in a historical context, that was fucking yesterday. We just started
yeah.
this whole hobby. So like that that is there. So again, you don't know what you don't know. So if you're looking around and let's say your sample size is only one half of the population, right? Then like you can't
Then
make
something.
assumptions about why women aren't playing your game. Maybe it's them or maybe it's you, and that requires some
Yeah.
insight, which they
He
didn't have at first.
yeah, thankfully the author didn't make I think he made some statements where he was like, it's important to note that women aren't as big a part of this. And then he put what are the potentials for it? And he wrote kind of like a list, which my understanding is based on my classes, what I was told is when you're doing some higher level paperwork stuff, you generally want to put like, this is what our data is, this is data,
Mhm,
this is what we think is going on.
mhm.
Here are potential other theories that we think could be it. And here's also some areas that might be interesting questions to lead into and look into and all that stuff. And then you put your conclusion. Because the important part is, like you said, you want to make sure it's like, this is what I think's going on. I need to know if I'm wrong. And then, like, so I can destroy these things, find the truth, and focus only on the truth of things.
Intellectual rigor
Yeah,
is, I mean, important in academia, but I think in just like in life in general. Honestly, I think
100%.
I think the some of the other YouTubers you talk to are more successful in like YouTube terms. Um, I don't want to cast stones, but there's some people out there who get a lot more clicks and views than I do because it's very much like this, like rage bait, one way, the rightness, the wrong, and like bashing on Hasbro is a very popular thing. And everybody
Yeah,
had to be like, look, man, I disagree with all of this, right? And we banded together and beat them. I think that's like a big lesson that gets buried in the OGL conversations. Like
yeah.
still like beating up on Hasbro and the poor decision making is popular and gets clicks because it's the internet. But I love the idea of, what makes this community special. How did this plucky group of nerds, you
Yeah.
know, how did this outsider, how did this collection of different fringe groups force a Fortune 500 company to kneel and put their IP, whether or not legally it was protected in the first place. They threw it in the Creative Commons, and like we won pretty
Yeah.
handily. And we can talk for the intervening year. Did everything work on their side? Did they learn their lessons? Probably not. No, it doesn't look like it from where I'm sitting. But
Question.
we
Um,
won. What's up?
Definitely. Well, I have a question. A YouTube video came out recently which kind of talks about some of the you said it was clickbait stuff. It sort of talks about the clickbait. Is it okay to talk about other creators in the interview and things like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I acknowledge and will link to everybody who exists. I don't,
Well,
if this gets really bashy, maybe we'll cut it out because I don't
it,
like,
it wasn't meant to be bashy.
okay, yes.
It's the thing that you were talking about is something that Dungeon Craft was recently talking about in one of his videos,
Uh-huh.
which is he says the YouTube algorithm is specifically written in such a way that if you don't do some of the clickbaity titles and things like that, you kind of lose relevance because
Yes.
it was if there is drama going on, everybody wants to hear about the drama. So you should make one video about the drama just to talk about it because it'll take half an afternoon. You'll get a huge view count, and then you can have all your other videos, and then the algorithm will put you on front page with everybody else. But
Mm,
if you don't do that, the algorithm says, well, nobody's looking into that, so your video we don't really care about. And then
mm.
they kind of bury you underneath the sea of everything else, which is yeah. And so listening to that video is like, man, this is oh.
And if,
um,
honestly, if the verdigris table, like whatever, it's a YouTube channel for sure. I put a lot of time and effort and
yeah.
energy into YouTube. You're watching this on YouTube probably. But if it was the only part of like the business, right, of verdigris
Mhm.
table, like I would have to decide differently. And like what I am financially privileged to be able to make choices like this, right? Like I'm not
Yep.
hating on anybody for responding to the incentives that are in play, but
No, definitely.
I think everyone needs to realize and perhaps consider whether they like the incentives that are at play and what they're doing to our brains and
Yeah,
our mental
exactly.
health and our emotional state. And if it stops working, then they're going to change. The algorithm responds to what the humans pushing the buttons responds to, right? It's a
Yeah,
feedback loop. So if we don't seem to be tired of everything's on fire. And I mean, I've made those videos. I've made those videos and then try to
100%.
like kung fu talk about this subject in that, and those videos they don't do as well because people figure out that like, oh, this guy's not really trying to make me angry. I'm angry at him now. Click away. Like I don't know.
Nice, excellent. Do you mind if I use the restroom real quick?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're gonna take a
Thank
quick
you.
break and we're gonna roll some dice and get into the fun stuff. Yeah.
Nice,
Take a
perfect.
little break. All right. And we are back. I'm going to stop asking you to take a 50,000-foot view and analyze the culture and community and history of Dungeons and Dragons. And we're gonna get personal.
The
Uh,
real answer is we're always improving and doing our best, and
we're doing our
sometimes
best.
horrible things happen.
We're doing our best. We're doing our. That's the secret of. That's what being a dungeon master has taught me more than anything. Is you do your best
Yeah.
and you get another shot at it around, as long as you're lucky. All right, so let's roll a d20 and let's see what our first question in d20 questions is.
All right, rolling d20. Is that a 16 or a 7?
Oh, is it cocked? It's funny. I turned off the results. We'll call it 16.
Okay, okay,
Call it
16.
16. All right. Oh, this is an interesting one. What common advice really only applies to more advanced game masters? So like something that gets thrown out a lot that like is not as beginner friendly as some people seem to think.
Um, this is gonna sound bad,
Ooh,
controversial wise.
good. Maybe I'll get some more views. Let's go.
Do what you want.
That's controversial. Oh,
No, what's controversial is that's something only experienced DMs should do.
oh, okay. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes, yes.
yeah. And my reason for that is it's the advice usually doesn't come with all the caveats you need, which is like if it's your first time DMing, you honestly should be trying out other stuff so you can find what's the things you really like doing. Because sometimes you'll be like, well, I don't know about that. But it's like you should, if you've not ever tried it once, you should probably try it once, unless it's like super related to something that went terribly. You're like, okay, no, this is exactly the same as the time I tried to get one of the players to backstab another player and everybody was sad at the end. Let's not do that
Mhm.
again.
Mhm.
But if it's something that you actually truly have no like reference point for, you should probably try it. Um, because the doing what you want can it's that level of advice where like people say just be yourself or just do whatever you want, things like that, and then you try something and things just happen and you don't understand like why things went the way they went or anything like that. And I think that you have a network of knowledge and it might be missing when it comes to things like just do what you want or do whatever is you. And it's best to like try to learn where does everything kind of hash out, especially in a game, because D&D is a game. It's far less likely you're going to do something that horrifically changes the course of anyone's life when you test something out in a video game, in a video game or a TTRPG, anything like that. Especially when you tell your friends beforehand, guys, I'm trying something new. It's just going to see where it goes. And doing what you want is limiting in the fact that there are so many more things to learn to figure out an even greater extent as to what you want. And I think Nintendo talks about this for their video games, which is they always try to do something new. And while they're at the state where I hate that because they were making great games and then they started making some weird games, it's an important aspect of you do want to test, you want to alter, you want to see what works, what you like, what you like of the things that work, and hold to those, and then try out the different and new things. I'm working on my own kind of like RPG system right now, and it is mostly taken from like a bunch of different things where I'm like, I liked this from this, I liked this from this is great from this, and like cobble it together into this mash of like something that I think makes the game truly like interesting and unique and wonderful because it's a mixture of all these things that different people didn't think to mix together because they just didn't happen to have them at the time. And so more and more experience, more and more testing gets you this idea of like, well, this worked well, maybe I can make it work with this and have something really great happen.
Yeah, fascinating. You don't know what you don't know. It's what we were talking about before. Like
Yeah.
to be like, I don't like hex crawls. Hex crawls are stupid. It's like, have you ever done one? It's like, no, I don't understand them. It's like, okay, well, figure out how to successfully do one and then decide if you like it or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like whatever it is. Like, I don't like pizza. It's like, have you had it? It's like, no. It's like, okay. Yes, once in school in third grade, the cafeteria, it was bad. It's like, well, let me tell you, man, there's other kinds of pizza out there, and some of them are quite good.
100%.
Like, all right, you're gluten intolerant, cool. Well, there's still pizza for you, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's try things, just try things, experiment. There's no one true way. D&D started as 3 games held together with paper clips and bubble gum, and we've
Yeah.
added 20 games to it since then. And like, what you're doing to create a TTRPG is like that is the way, right? Whether or not you are trying to like create your own game or just run your own version of 5e, like there's a million games out there. There's a million little tips and tricks, and some of them click together really well, and some of
Yep.
them create interesting sparks, and some of them create sparks that burn the system down and like don't necessarily fit together.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
And
that's good. That's good. I like that.
yeah, and that's the main thing about it is the that's why for a more advanced one I say go ahead and do that because you're advanced it's like today we'll just do this because you've already got this giant background of tested out material and it's like might as well like go through it and try again.
Yeah, learn running games, even playing D&D, but like learning how to run it. You do that by doing it, right? There's
Yeah.
like a ton of things where I can like tell you like this is going to happen if this happens, but like until you experience it, you haven't internalized that as much. And we're all different people. You're built different. You might see an angle that I don't see, or what you might enjoy stuff that I don't, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So yeah, try everything. Like I am lucky and weird in that like that's my default setting. Like I get bored and I want different stuff. Give me the flight, give me the buffet, give me the sampler. Like
Yep.
I want to try every mode of play and every system and rule set and variation and whatever.
100%. And
I think
my uh to the pizza thing you said, I would say it's really important. You do try again. You just need to just accept that, don't like force yourself to try a mechanic 4 or 5 times within 4 or 5 months. Be like, okay, I hated everything about that. Let's wait a year or two and maybe I'll have a different view on it on this sort of thing, or even 5 years, or there's a lot of mechanics out there. You can wait a long time before you come back to something that didn't work once because it happened to be cafeteria pizza instead of gourmet pizza.
Mhm, mhm. Good. I
Yeah.
like that. Give me another D20. Let's see what's
All
up.
right. Another D20. That's a 3.
That's a 3. I'm gonna switch this out. I had to switch it out last time. Let's see him. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Ooh, what is your TTRPG origin story? I imagine you didn't
Oh,
start, you didn't get into this by studying it, right? What is
uh, maybe. Oh, also the story, you can determine how much of that was studying. So, I was at the mall with family, and there was like a game, like a small game store, and it wasn't like a GameStop. It was different. And I was like, "What's that?" And my parents said, "Oh, well, you can go check it out or whatever." I think I was with my dad at the time, and I walked in, looked around, and just a bunch of stuff. But then on this one bookcase was the back of Dungeons and Dragons. I think it was third edition, I think. Because I was like, what's this? And I pulled it up, and the sword was laid across the book. The like golden sword was just laid
hmm
across the book. And
hmm
I was like, okay. And there were, I think there were jewels on the spine thing, like, not real jewels, the painted on little jewels. And so I like opened the book and I read through, and like, I think the first thing that really got me was Krusk, and like Miley. And I was like, who are these people? And I like ran through and was like, oh my God, I love all this. And like kept seeing the different characters and stuff like that. And I loved just the look of like, Krusk and Miley. They were great. And it had like this weird chart on like physical age description and stuff, and I was like, what is all this? Because they got that, what was that? It was like a side, it was like a bar view of all the races in their underwear just standing there next to each other. Like,
hmm
I was like, what
hmm
is this? And I was like, I gotta try this. I don't remember, it was like, it was teens, it was like 16, 14 kind of thing. And I was just like, this. And my dad was like, you sure you want it? I was like, yeah, I don't know anything else. I just know I want this. And he was like, okay. So we got it, and I got it, and I can't remember if I got any of the other books, but I at least got that. And they talked about like making a character and that sort of thing. And I must have got another book because there was like some mini module about seeing bandits in a or wolves attacking you in a cabin or something like that. Something that I don't quite remember, but I just saw it, I loved it, and I instantly wanted to know more. So I sat there and I read not all of it because I'm terrible at that, but I read like the bits that interested me. And there was like an online character creator, so I tried to make that, and I made like a half elf ranger. Um, I forget why I knew about Driz Do'Urden, because I swear I knew about him sort of, but I made it half elf ranger with scimitars and stuff like that, and I wanted to do more, and I knew nobody in school that wanted to
mm
play. I knew one
mm
person who kind of knew about it, played with them maybe like once. I ended up, I think it wasn't until I found a gaming store, which was years later because schoolwork was always the focus. Um, that I finally got to play with other people. It might have been slightly before that because there was one friend that I met, and I either met him at my local gaming store or I met him like slightly before, something like that. But he was one of the few people that we played D&D with, and there was just never enough. It was never enough. And I eventually got more kind of like assimilated and acclimated to like a better idea of how to like play the game and how to do things. And it ended up becoming a lot of my social life. And so it really helped me like improve who I was as like a social being and things like that.
mm
And so it was just keep playing more, play as much as we can. And there are times when I don't want to play, but they are pretty rare. It's just a like I gotta keep. It's the only game for me. If the apocalypse happened, I'd like to save one TTRPG book so that I can sit with the people around the trash can fire and be like, we're
mm
playing this, and they're like, why? It's like, because I rule these lands. This apocalyptic wasteland is saved by me, so we need to do this. But yeah, that's all silly story. But just it's always been the thing. And I, for the longest time, was like, well, the answer was it was really TTRPGs will always be with me. But for the longest time, I said like I can't ever see myself stopping playing D&D.
mm.
And then OGL happened, and we're done there. I just for
I
me, I know for me personally, it was just that anybody who plays good, whatever your game is, whatever anything is, it just for me, it was just like I can play it, but I can't DM it, I can't run it anymore, I
mhm.
can't put energy towards it.
I so that makes sense to me. I don't. cast aspersions at anybody for
Yeah.
playing 5e. I've returned to 5e very
Yeah.
recently, but like in the
Very
heart
good.
of that, I went to my group. I'm like to the point of like, I run a very a democratic table, so like we mostly play 5e because that's what all the people want to play. And I
Yeah.
was just
Yeah. Yeah.
like going back to like selfish versus healthy boundaries. Is like I'm not running fifth edition right now, so we're playing different things. You have a choice of what those different things are. But that was my response to the heart of it. I only just recently came back because because the Vertier table is very like educational minded. I got to the point personally, and I'm not saying anyone should come along with me, but I got to the point of like I'm going to meet people where they are, and this is where they like this is where the gates are, right? Like I almost want to reclaim D&D as like this blanket terminology for TTRPGs, which is no one's coming with me, and I understand why.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
It's
I
over
mean, if
idealized.
I don't get me wrong, if I had $7 billion, I'd buy, D&D for, whatever the fraction of the amount of money I need would be, and then I would say, all right, I own it now, and I've got some changes around here to
Well,
make.
that's what I came to. And again, maybe it's overly idealistic or whatever, but this like, nah, they don't, especially once like we won, it went into Creative
Mhm.
Commons. I still backed off of everything. But it's like, okay, we won and now it's ours. What I'm not gonna let them have it anymore. And again, maybe
Yeah, yeah,
that's overly idealized or rational or whatever, but like D&D is more than the Monopoly man. Right? Like they
100%.
don't get to
Yeah,
have it. And I'm not saying like you should play 5e because it's the best system. Like play 100 systems. There's a
yeah,
bunch of
yeah.
things that are not 5e on
But
that shelf that I'm like very happy to be running and reading and
yeah,
experiencing, and it makes you better at everything. Again,
especially,
I want the sampler. Give me everything.
yeah, 100%. Especially you want to give, you want to try everything because there might be one RPG which is better for you than any other. Not necessarily because it's the best, but because it's the best for your circumstances. Like if you only
Mm.
get to play for an hour, I've heard that Morkborg can get you a character in 30 seconds. So go play Morkborg if you only have an hour.
A
Like
lot
that
of
kind of a thing.
I really like a lot of the sensibilities to Markboard. You're
Yeah.
doomed. It's all coming apart. Premise: this character's dead soon. Like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
roll a dice, see
The
how. But
yeah. And
I think a lot of people who've come in through fifth edition or Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's not like 3, 5, and 4 were easier. I think a lot of people who started at D&D are reluctant to learn a new thing because
yeah.
it took so much time to learn this thing, and like almost everything is a lot simpler and a lot faster to pick up and a lot quicker, and that
Yeah.
in and of itself can be a lot of fun when you're not
100%.
oh I guess this character died, I need to go spend 2 hours on D&D Beyond or now here, let's go. Like
Yep. Yep.
that can be fun
I
too. I want to circle back for a second though. You said I imagine you're playing other systems was implicit, but I realized I made that assumption. You're
yeah.
playing TTRPGs right now, just not D&D, or you're like done with the hobby for a sec?
So I'm not done with the hobby. I'm
Okay.
done with just D&D, but
Okay.
I while I am playing other TTRPGs, my main focus became my um I think anybody who looked at it would call it the Vengeance Project, so I don't think it's fair to try to describe it as anything but that. Basically like right after I was sitting there and I was like, okay, I'm gonna make my own RPG now. And then I've been working on that for like the last year, getting rules and everything and writing stuff up.
Mm.
And that's it's not like I sit there going like hate writing for like 6 hours a day going like D and D like I'm just like I'm gonna make my own RPG, and I started working on it, but it came so immediately after the other thing that it's like I think anybody who looks at it would be like, yeah, it was definitely that started it. It's you can't say that's not real. Like there was definitely something that like acted as the first spark of that.
there's
But
a
like
there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of spite
yeah, yeah, and
spite initiated
I
things. Yeah.
try not to put that as much as I can into what I'm making, but I gotta say that every time that I'm finished writing a section about spellcasting and mages and wizards and any kind of a spellcaster, I look back at what I've wrote and I'm like, man, I hate wizards for some reason. I just hate mages in general. I don't know why. And then
Mm.
I go back to doing my own. It's more complicated than being a fighter. Like
Hmm.
and that's it. Every time I look back, I'm like, it's so complicated, and I wish it were less complicated. and I try to figure it out, but when I'm done writing it, it's just like it doesn't feel right unless it's like this. So that's an interesting own thing.
It's a challenge because I think, yeah, magic
Yeah,
should be, or like
yeah,
wizard academic magic should be like slightly complicated, but I think it's overly complicated, and it
yeah.
research survey of
It's
other systems. Most other systems, plenty of people have figured out how to make spellcasting not suck
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
hard.
I think maybe I just need to read a couple of other RPGs and get some other ideas. But right now I have it the way that it's like this is what I think should work. And then we'll see how things go. But the real thing is that I started this because I just was like, well, I'm not gonna do D&D, and I kind of don't want to do like I love other RPGs, but I kind of want to do my own thing. And the reason why was because I don't want another company to do the same thing. Because if it
Mm,
happened with one, it can happen with any of them. And I get that, I'm not, and in no way am I saying anything bad about any of the creators of anything. It just became a like, I got to do this for me so that I have my system and I have my lore world and I have my this, and that nobody's
mm,
gonna like pull it out from under me, sort of thing. And so like I've been building it. And the first thing I did was I was like, what was my favorite RPG that I played with my friends? And then that it wasn't D&D, it was this other one. I was like, okay, cool. So that's what we're starting as the basic dice system. There's a 2d6 system
mm,
where you get to get extra dice occasionally and things like that. So I was like, throw that in there. And then I was like, okay, what else do I want? And it's just been like adding things and trying to put in like a very base level of everything of just like I took a death mechanic from Powered by the I took the death mechanic from Powered by the Apocalypse. I took the I took the Iron Vow from I think it might just be called Iron Vow. It's an RPG where an event happens and your character has to make a vow that he'll go do this thing, and then there are like problems and journeys along the way. Really cool, interesting system, which I knew off the top of my head exactly what it was. And I've just been taking things that I liked and then modifying them to what makes the most sense for me, kind of within the world and stuff like that. Just because I have views that are this is how this works. Like the I just have these like the lore is too much, but there's just a lot of stuff where it's like this is how this works. There are no questions in my mind about it. And then the when I'm playing with my players, I basically say, well, this is how this society generally works. And then they say, I'd like to be this, and I'd be like, cool. Are you sort of connected with your hometown? You still have a good life, or have you like gone the route of most adventurers and something happened and now you can never go back home?
mm,
Because the major conceit of most adventuring is hopefully if you're an adventurer you have wanderlust. You're like, I want to see these amazing beautiful things, I want to do all this stuff, I want to da, da, da. But my understanding, as I've seen many of it, is usually it's well, I can't go back home anymore. So we're
mhm.
gonna keep doing work for randoms until I find a new home.
That really, so like that DIY spirit, I think is like so built into the core, and I do
Yeah,
think it was instrumental in the OGL pushback, and I
yeah,
I I don't have like the clear A to B connection there, but that definitely seems to be, perhaps it's from the mother's necessity is the mother of invention, right? Like I
yeah.
think that kind of goes hand in hand with this like outsider fringe mentality where it's like, okay, for whatever reason, like that's not for me. I'm gonna make my own. And I think it's interesting. I don't know. I'm just thinking of this now. I don't know, like
Yeah.
within academic rigor, what like the inroad would be for that. But I think that's a core part of the response as well. And I don't think it's not necessarily a super separate thing from like
Yeah.
we're on the fringes,
I
which leads into my character creation process, as you were
100%.
saying just
So
now.
100% agreed. So getting back to the paper really quick,
Uh,
or the project of it, some of the things that I've been reading, because part of it is you read the research of previous researchers.
mhm,
One researcher talked about there was this item called, I think it was the Apple Newton or the Newton 2. And it's basically this Apple product that was made like 20 years ago, and it was like one of the best that you could ever make for the time. And it was like it could do like everything. It was like personal assistant, a phone, it could do music, it could do all these things, and it could connect with basically anything. And then they like immediately dropped supporting it.
Mm.
And then the community holds to the Newton forever. Like I forget, like they did the study for a while, and it was somewhere in the 2000s that they finally stopped, and it still had a community of like 2 million active users or something like
Mm.
that, of these people who just refuse to let the product die no matter what, because it was such a good quality product. And they had like personal statements of things like, I will not buy anything else until they return to quality products, and this is an example of what a quality product is. And
Mm.
they have like wonderful stories about like accidentally leaving on the hood of their car, and it like falls in the middle of the freeway or something like that, and he runs out to get it, and the only thing that happened was the batteries popped out, so he just slams those back in and instantly it works again. And others who are like, I was trying to get it on this new operating system and I had to try 15 different ways, but then finally it did it. And I think that do-it-yourself mentality connects with this, because the thing that they came out with it is there are dead products where the community keeps doing what they're doing with it. And D&D, this is all pre-analysis. D&D very much, I think, is like that, in that no matter what Wizards does, it's essentially a dead product, because they give you the book and there's not much they can do after that, and everything else is you building something off of that. Like, you have to make changes to Storm King's Thunder. Usually you have to make changes to Ghosts of the Saltmarsh. There's things you have to do to get the stuff to work, especially for your table and for your own personal sensibilities. There are homebrew options you always have to do. I've heard people say that they've gotten through whole campaigns without making any homebrew, and I don't think that's necessarily as true as they think it is. There's something where you always have to, there's a wiggle room, because somebody asks, can I try blank? And it's like, well, that sounds very reasonable. Unfortunately, there's not a rule here, so now we have to make up, it's D&D, so roll a d20, add a modifier.
Exact. There's a fine line between, I think people think homebrew means inventing from whole cloth
Yeah,
game world, and it's in prep, and like and maybe that's that's a working definition, right? I'm not
yeah,
arguing for accuracy or not, but like yeah, no campaign survives contact with the enemy, and the enemy's the players. The
yeah.
a game master is constantly inventing the game as they go. Um, and if they're not, then I don't want to be at the table. I don't know what that means, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
um,
mean, I've seen some say that they definitely don't, and I would be intrigued in watching. Anything can be real,
I think it's a
but
matter of how they're defining homebrew, right? Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I didn't prep this, so like the stuff that I make up on the fly doesn't count because I didn't build the pantheon the way the DMG told me to start. And like this
Yeah,
isn't
yeah, yeah, yeah.
have I don't know where on the continent that I made up this is happening or whatever. So I think I think it might be like different definitions than it is actually like I never make stuff up because like that's
Yeah, I mean,
hard for me to
agreed.
conceive of,
Yeah.
really.
Another
Um,
example I can think of that's similar is the railroading thing. Like, I
mm.
thought railroading had a pretty clear definition, and then Matt Colville had his video, and like half the comments were, "That's railroading," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, just there's a wide breadth of definition for these terms, and it can get narrowed and depends on who you are and
And that's what
everything.
makes me like realize how this is not a community, but a network of interconnected communities. And a lot of those communities are 4 or 5 people deep. Where like we just like
Yeah,
we're all using the same words, but there isn't some authoritative, and again, because it's like
yeah,
a counterculture is too strong of a word now for something that's been so successful, but like we resist that.
yeah,
And circling back real quick to the to your Apple product analogy, like you're describing the birth of the OSR, right? Like OSR now is a I think has like fractured actually into a bunch of different communities, which is interesting because like
okay.
people are
I
arguing about what OSR means, and it's revival or it's Renaissance, and like that even that's like a 10-year-old argument now, and like it's
yeah,
there's 4 other things attached to it, but
yeah.
like
I've heard some things. I've only ever dipped my toes into OSR, but every time I dip in, there's new, like, now are you doing OSR as in this or OSR as in this? And I'm like, what?
Yes.
I'm confused. Let me leave again.
So people are, yeah, and there's some like there's a lot of egos involved, and a lot of people yelling on the internet about what the true OSR is or whatever.
That's
And like
life.
that's life. That's life on the internet. And people are gonna, it's
Yeah.
probably, it might be happening down below right now as I dive into this subject. But the
I'll be
OSR,
fine. It'll be fine.
yeah,
They're just gonna tucker themselves out.
I couldn't be doing this for this long if I didn't have some sort of process in place for dealing with that shit. The OSR started because they attempted to harness the power of planned obsolescence, and during like 3.5 they weren't making the old books anymore. And they might have not just been profit motivated. It was literally like TSR was making that, and now Wizards was making this, and who, I don't know
Yeah.
the ins and the outs of all of that stuff. But people were like, I don't like that. I liked this. I'm going to make this, and I'm going to make it work. And in the process, improved it or built their version of it. But like the
Yep.
beginning of the OSR is those like, this is AD&D. This is as close to AD&D as I can make it. This is as close to basic expert as I can make it. This is whatever. This is zero. This is 2E. And like it became a lot of like competing camps a little bit, but it was a communal project to build the thing again that was gone, that they loved.
Yep.
And there was no, and it's a vibrant community where a lot of great, like you could argue a lot of the cool things that you mentioned, Powered by the Apocalypse. A lot of systems came from, directly or indirectly, came from that movement to like, we're gonna make our own version with blackjack and hookers. Um,
You know what? Forget the blackjack. End the game.
we can make our own version of this. And again, that's
Yeah, yeah,
deep
exactly.
in the DIY culture of it all. So like sometimes that conflicts with the monetization of it all. And that's their problem, not ours. We won the fight already.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Do you want another question, or do you want
Oh yeah,
do
let's
you want
more questions. I
more
love
questions?
questions.
Let's roll one more
I
D20,
love questions.
and then we're gonna take a tiny break, and we're gonna get into the other side of the gamification of this show. We're gonna build a character.
Cool.
Uh
13. Did we just do 13?
we had 16, and I forget what the other one was, but it was low.
Okay. Okay, cool. Then as long
Uh
as 13 is new.
Lucky 13. What is on, well, if you get doubles, it's the lightning round. But
Nice.
what is on your dungeon master screen, or in your kit? What are your must-haves? What are the tools you have at your disposal when you're running a game?
Oh man. The players.
Good answer. Good answer.
So the answer is I'm pretty willing to DM anything at any time. I once asked a buddy for a sheet of paper because the group wanted to do a game. So I was like, give me a 3x5 card. And they were like, okay. And I sat there and wrote down like Forrest and Romeo and Juliet and was like, perfect, they're going to the Feywild. And that was it. That was how that session ran. But in general, what I bring to the table is I've got a laptop, and on it I've made an Excel spreadsheet for travel time and days, and
Mm,
then a random encounter generator for is something going to happen, and it's way simpler than like a lot of them are like here's a list of specific monsters and things like that. What I instead do is it says if I roll a 6, then there's an encounter, and like a 1 to 4 is you get an animal. A 5 is no. 1 to 3 is you get an animal. 4 is you meet a human, which means there's something political is happening. You meet someone and something political is happening. A 5 is some kind of a magical event, and a 6 is you still get an encounter, but it's not localized. It's from something farther out that's
mm,
doing something in the local area.
mm,
And then it just repeats over and over and over again. So I had one player, he got something from like 6 towns, something like 6 areas over, which meant it
mm,
was outside the country in
mm,
another country. And I was like, what is there a thing that, and then it came up magical. And I was so angry because I was like, what magical thing is happening 2 countries away that comes here? And so that's how he saw a horrible giant molten fireball in the sky that made like a weird walrus man made out of metal, and that determined the rest of his campaign. Because he was like, this is all I care about now is this kooky
Mhm.
metal that I've picked up. And I was like, great, there are other things to do. And he was like, this metal is the most important thing. And you know, not, and it was great. It was wonderful. It was super cool. And the metal was super important and could do like all these fun things. And so that's that. And then yeah, dice and like basically the laptop takes up all the needs for, you know,
Mhm.
like I don't need a calculator because the laptop has a calculator. I don't need a pen because the laptop has a pen. I don't, you know, like everything's kind of like on there. And I just try to figure out what are the things that I can do that are the easiest things that help me get the job done for the game as best as possible. Um,
Yeah, you're speaking my language. I love tables. Like
yeah,
they're like for the game master, for at least the kind of game master I am, the immersion happens for me when the emergence happens, like when
yeah,
the world that I've built does stuff, right? It's not like I decided this in prep. It's like I built this tool and the dice said this happens, and all of a sudden it interacts with what is already there and then what the players do, and like
yeah,
that's when I am playing the game, like watching these connections. That's why I built what we're going to use next. Like I love that shit. Like some of the first
100%.
products, like the reason verdigris tables, because I mean, because I have a copper like patina table, but also
Nice.
like tables.
Yep, yep.
Like
The
some,
what I find is the best thing is, and I think this is something, I know this is weird because I'm not quite answering your question, but I think it's important advice. When you have a table, it's really important to think for 5 seconds about why this showed up.
mm-hmm,
Because if you roll ogre and an ogre shows up, the party's gonna go, oh, an ogre. But if you roll ogre and then you're like, this ogre is a representative of this dude from this other place and is doing something very specific, all of a sudden the ogre doesn't have to be a fight. The ogre could just stand there and be like, right, let me tell you how this is going. My boss says that this is a toll road. You can either pay me or I don't know, F off. And just
mm-hmm,
have them go, who's your boss? And then he gives like a legitimate sounding name, and everyone's like, this sounds real. Uh-oh.
mm-hmm.
This we might killing this guy might not be an option. He didn't just say like Thrag. He said like, you know, his name is Lord Calicinta Derelius.
His middle name
And
is
then
he's important.
yeah, yeah. And they're like, what? And he's like, Calicinter Derelius. And like, then he's like more sure. And they're like, wait, you could be lying. And he's like, nope. And then he like pulls out a weird looking badge. And everyone's like, this is seeming more legitimate every moment.
Mm. And that yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people don't like it goes back to like try every kind of pizza. A lot of people don't like random encounter tables because they've only ever had cafeteria food.
Yeah,
And it's like 1d6 goblins, 1d8 wolves. It's like that's
yeah.
terrible.
No,
That's not that's the thing that you use to make your random encounter tables in prep.
yeah,
Like the context is everything. Like I you're gonna walk through the wilderness in this fantasy location for 3 to 4 days and nothing interesting is gonna happen. There's nothing
yeah,
interesting if you kick over this rock. Like no, that's where encounter tables let you create a living, breathing world. And like that ogre, like I always have the roll twice when I have like that like bell curve, like you were talking about,
yeah,
of
yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
the D6, like the mass, like the nested table. One of those is always like the interaction between the two. So like that thing from six, the walrus metal from 6 hexes over comes here and interacts with that ogre, and that's the thing. He's showing them that badge because it fell out of the sky one day, and the boss he made up, and like what,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
now
yeah,
I
yeah.
scratch that, and what comes out is story and interaction, and just like
Exactly. It could be something just like that. But yeah, it's such a good thing. And what I love is you can make the table kind of whatever you want. The reason I made it like animal, political, magic, and then and then something from further afield, and why I originally made it like on a 6 was something happens is because I was reading some of the old stuff from Goodman Games released this thing on the Castle Amber and a
Mm.
couple of other ones,
Hmm.
original like Dungeons and Dragons things, and they have interviews and they were explaining like, oh yeah, originally we used to like roll a d6 and then this would happen, and so I kind of used slash stole those and made my own thing from it, which was the idea that like I get to roll a d6, and in my mind, no good country can survive unless you can pretty much do at least a day's worth of travel without being harassed horrifically, or even more so like you know 6 days of travel. You know, like you have a 1 in 6 chance of something happening. So
Hmm.
on my hex, what I do is I have the list of like how many days, and I roll, and nothing happens for a good majority of the time because it's only a 1 in 6 chance. So the roads are relatively safe, and I think that's what's really important. Is it makes sense for the world that
Hmm.
most people can actually do trade.
Hmm.
And then, the rest is just what, they usually are going to find a weird animal doing something. And then further afield is they find a human doing something weird, or, any other race, just somebody doing something weird or interesting or out there. And then the last is like some kind of horrific magical event, which is just, well, what are we going to do now?
That magical weather, baby. It's yeah, that's
Yeah.
what's up.
It's like, oh, why is there a dust tornado? Well, it's been sitting there for the last 6 hours. Maybe we can avoid it. Oh, look, we avoided it. Sweet.
Mhm.
So let's hope nobody else messes with that.
Yeah, it's like this huge air elemental that they could upset, but is sitting on
Yeah.
top of treasure or something. Yeah. Or you can walk by and investigate and continue on to the dungeon, or this could be what we do this session. Like
Yeah.
that's the juice for me. That's the
I
like
once had
the open worldiness. Yeah.
a monstrosity show up, a mix between like 3 or 4 different animals. And the party looked at it and they were like, "What is it?" And I was like, "It's a monstrosity. It's like the mix between like a lizard and a vulture." And they were like, "Ah, okay. What does it do?" And I'm like, right now it looks like it's barely surviving life, and because it wasn't meant for this realm. And
Mm.
they're like, what? How did this get made? And I was like, wizards do that all the
Wizard did
time.
it. Wizard did
and
it.
and they were like, is that legal? And I was like, of course it's not. And they were like, could we find where it came from? And I was like, it's got tracks. And they were like, we don't want to do this. There's a town in 3 days, right? I was like, yes, there's a town in 3 days. And they're like, okay, we'll go to the town. We'll walk up to the mayor and we'll tell him there's a wizard and he'll take care of it. And so they did that. And then they came back a few days later and there were 4 adventurers with a bag with a head in it and a whole bunch of cages full of wild monstrosities.
Mm,
And the party
mm.
was like, we did good, gang. We did good.
Yeah. I like having they can be competition, which is always interesting too, but like
Yeah.
you guys are not the only adventurers here. You don't have to answer every plot hook because like someone else will come clean up after you.
No,
But they're gonna get that gold. They're gonna get that XP.
yeah.
Um,
I've been one of my parties has been very interesting in that they've got this long-term goal to do a vengeance quest.
mm,
And every time I roll it no matter what. So they see things happen and they're like, well, that's not useful to the vengeance quest right now. So bye. they and it's fun because I can make up a plot and I don't have to worry about them actually like going for it. I can just like something fun and interesting that adds to the world for a later time. So like at one point they were going through the ocean and a merfolk showed up and was like, we want to hire a bunch of people on your boat, about a dozen, to go into the underwater ruins to help reclaim them. And the party was like, that's a death trap. And I was like, yeah, but that's what they want to do. And they were like, anyone who joins on this mission could die. And I was like, yeah, like most adventures. And they were like, do they know this is like real? It's like, yeah, there's the kingdoms have, vague treaties with each other. That you can't exactly ply the waterways without the permission of the water people, or else the water people are going to mess up your life.
mm,
And so they were like, okay, well, we don't want to do that, so leave. And I was like, all right, well, a dozen people from your boat want to do it, so they leave with the merfolk. And they were like, those people are gonna die. which is hilarious.
Maybe. Yeah, and that's again tables and tools that will let you generate adventure on the fly.
Yep, 100%.
Let you fill up your sandbox with toys and not be afraid. Like your
Yeah,
players can say no to stuff because there's always something else. You're always ready. People prepare like the railroad or whatever, a linear adventure, and then divergence from that path is terrifying and is doom for the dungeon master. Where it's like,
yeah,
you can go wherever you want, and stuff will happen. You will, if you look, you will find things.
yep.
So
I try
do what you like.
I try to make it that I give a lot of linear content, but it's always optional. And I find that the party always will like latch onto it if they can. Like they
Mm-hmm.
sometimes won't, but it's pretty rare. Usually the parties that I have worked with have when they see something that looks like an obvious hook, like really obvious to them, they'll like, that's what we're doing.
Yes,
And I'll like, and it can be anything. Like, go
it's good.
slay the evil dragon who owns a country. Yeah,
Check.
that's the plot, right? And I just like, shit, you say so. It's only like, 20 sessions later that they stop and go, are we doing this again? And then I tell them, like, you saw a poster and said that's the plot, right? And then they go like, well, we can't leave now.
We're pot committed.
It's
Yeah, and it's good to be prepared, even if they're trying to follow the plot. You don't know they don't know what they don't know. So they will, if they hit a dead end and start to explore, you can have that generated content flow back into
yep.
the main storyline, because like that ogre who's sitting there collecting tolls is going to have opinions about the dragon, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Whether he's working for him or he's against him because it's cutting into business,
Oh
because
yeah.
no one wants to hit the road over there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, the dragon. Gotta respect the hustle.
Yeah,
I hate him.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it can be complicated. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just I love him, but man, I'd kill him right now if he were here. And weak because he's the dragon.
Oh man. All right, good stuff. All right, we're gonna take one more quick break, and then we're gonna roll on the Game Master's Compendium of Explosive Creation. We're gonna make a gambler, right? You decided on
Sounds good.
gambler. A good
I want to
choice.
gamble. Gambling's good.
Speaking of being pot committed, all right, we'll be right back. All right, and we are back with Matthew Middleton. We are making a gambler, a character archetype near and dear to my heart.
Nice.
Um,
Gambling, I'm in.
so I'm going to ask you to take real physical dice, one of each, and roll them all at the same time, because it is
Oop.
a deeply satisfying thing to do.
Yep. Just
Uh,
gonna show the Gatamon.
let them know. D20, 12, 8, 4, 6, 10.
All right. So, all right, we got our dice out. Some wonderful rolls here.
There's mostly no good or bad here, but some of the tables do have numerical gradation, let's call it. So
Yeah.
what did you get on your, well, going into it, do you have any kind of pre-established character concept here? Are we working on a PC you've already got? Is this an NPC you're going to throw at your players in your campaign, or are we starting from zero?
Nothing specific yet in my mind. I wanted to go into this fairly fresh once I understood what the idea was about. I was like, let's because I could always just make stuff up, but now we
Yeah,
get to like do it live.
yeah. It's without a net here.
Yeah.
So what did you get for the D20? This is like our character's motivation.
I got the 12, which is of course the best one. Open a casino and become the house.
God.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that for so many reasons. It has a little bit of like a it tells me something about the character right away, right? They're a hustler, they're like
Yep.
wise to it. Maybe they've been hurt by the system and they're trying to become the system in response. But there's no better
Oh,
motivation for adventuring than get money. Like,
I'm
thank you.
gonna I'm gonna give you a much worse statement.
Yes.
I'm taking become the house quite literally. We need to get an artifact because I will become the house.
Oh, you're
and
taking it
it will
literally.
run itself.
That took me a
Everything
second
will be
too.
animated. I know people will just all they know is they go in, they play casino games, and then I get all the money and I get to do whatever I want with it.
Mm, Yeah, because in a I mean, this is system neutral, but in a setting with some degree of magic in it, like that changes quite a bit the context of what a casino would look like.
Yeah. You
Ooh,
know what?
that's
To
interesting.
make this even better, let's say it's a low magic world where this is impossible and he just doesn't know that yet. Or we can do whatever because I just love the idea of like become the house means become the house.
Yes, yes, yes. And it's good. It's good to have goals. They don't have to
Yep.
be possible.
Yep. We can also do it can be very Fallout New Vegas where it's just I am the house. What are you doing, courier? Stop lighting the house on fire. No.
I am so Walton Goggins. Whenever Walton Goggins graces my screen, I get very excited. And I'm not a huge video game guy these days, but that I recently saw the commercial for the Fallout show, and I'm like, yes, me here now. What did you get on our D12? And this is a call
D12.
to adventure. This is how we get started from whatever we were doing, gambling to adventuring,
D12, I got a
perhaps.
6, a chance to regain what they gambled away.
That tracks. That
Yep.
tracks. So perchance they now they've lost all their money in the casino and they're like, I'm gonna come back and buy this place and make a better casino. Like, yeah,
Yep.
easy.
Or money maybe, but since the previous one was become, any chance of a map which definitely, heavy quotes around that, has the route to find the magic item to become the house.
Mm, mm. That's good because it's not necessarily, it could be a specific thing that they've gambled away.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
But
could
it could
also be
be,
like the relationship with people who they, wish they weren't gambling all the
oh God,
time. That's another
that
tact, but I like the idea of like
that hits hard.
he had he they had they had their ticket, right? They had the ticket to get the thing, become the thing,
Yep.
and they gambled it away because they thought it was a sure thing, and now they need to get it. They need to get it
It
back.
was definitely sure thing. They totally cheated. That's
Mhm.
that's the belief. That's not the
There, that's
the,
the
the
yeah.
the DM gets to decide whether that was real or not. But the gambler, they cheated me. I
Uh,
should know. I had the full house.
exactly. It was a sure thing. It was a sure thing. The D8 is our potential like character growth. So sometimes,
Yep.
I mean, this emerges organically through play, but sometimes if you know you have like a trajectory, you can kind of like pull back a little bit, so you have some momentum to lead
Right.
towards that. So, what do we get on the D8?
We got the 4, which is shifting what they value and what they will risk.
Mm,
I immediately am just like actually starts caring about this is a call. So the previous was a call to adventure. Like starts caring about like the other adventurers and is like, well, wait, I can't just leave them to die to become a house, but I want to.
mm-hmm.
Starting to realize like, hey, like there's other people, there's other things, because the money being the house is like, I think like you said, very much the like want to make sure nobody can hurt me, and the best way to do that is not just to be like the guy who owns the casino, because then some crazy rando stabs you with a knife because you've lost all their money. It's best to be like the house itself, because no one's gonna do anything. They're just gonna buy you and like maybe alter the function of the house. No one's gonna burn it down or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's this like almost like animism to it, right? Like, I mean, and
Yeah.
again, in a high magic world where like mimics exist or whatever, like maybe it is a sentient piece of architecture, but like to blame and covet and like desire to become the house literally.
Yeah,
God, yeah, just like that. I want to play this character already. That's like so interesting to explore.
definitely. And I think the mix becomes, especially if they're an adventurer, it's just spending time with people who like risk their lives for yours and bring you out of terrible like moments is potential for like really big change.
Mm.
Because like, you start by not telling them what your goal is, and then you find out their goal is like, I'm trying to get medicine for my wife, and you're just like, what? Oh, I
Mhm.
might be terrible.
And that's why like a lot of this is like session zero stuff, character creation, but like there's a reason it's not one or two of everything. Like you can come back to, maybe we re-examine our motivations and we roll another d20 when we
Yep.
level up at some point. Or we need another call to adventure to like motivate us to have a different set of ideals and goals here.
Yeah.
Uh,
Maybe just become a gambling table. That way the party can keep me around and I can shoot poker chips at my enemies.
you start small.
Yeah.
Uh,
Still give them that like insane plan. And it's like, okay, well, you're managing expectations.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any sense of like class? I just got like weird transmutation wizard vibes, but like what
I th-
are we leaning towards anything?
I I think something else than Transmutation Wizard. I know it's a little basic, but maybe like Rogue or Barbarian. I really like the idea of someone having this insane magical plan, but has none of the required like work put in to understand what they've exactly asked for. Because like any
Mm.
transmutation wizard would go with, so let me get this straight. You want to turn into a house that is 5,000 times your size so that people can enter you, but you still get to move around all the little interior bits and bobs because you're animated. And you just think there's like a magic doodad that does that out in the world.
Yeah, it's real Dunning-Kruger, right? Like you just learned that transmutation is a thing, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna be a house, like with no
Yeah,
context or examination.
100% just like I had an idea and I'm running with it. And like anybody of knowledge is like, you are insane. You
I
don't understand what you're doing. This
God,
is like lichdom.
I love that when you're like game master, my character wants something insane. You don't have to give them it because it's a crazy thing. Like I am willing to.
Yeah,
This is their goal. I don't need to obtain it. Like that's
absolutely,
just yeah,
100%.
yeah.
It's even funnier if they obtain it despite the DM trying to stop them.
Right. Well,
I
then
always
I mean, what does the campaign look like? What does that character's arc look like after they become a house, become a
exactly.
casino?
It's like what do you do? It's like I sit here and I float the trays to people and chips and everything, and I play cards with them. And it's like the rest of the party's like, I guess we hang out here forever now because we get free drinks, right? He's like, yeah, and the buffet. And they're like, yeah, the buffet. Okay, we could handle this.
Yeah, it's a great way to sunset something though. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's beautiful. And what you get on the D4? This is
D
a friendly faction.
D4 was a one, the Ratskeller, the
Mm,
weekly card game held in the town hall basement, attended by the influential.
That's a good information conduit for sure from like the game side of things.
Hmm.
So is this where he lost his golden ticket where the map went missing or
I feel like that's a good way to put it because most adventurers can just respond to everything with like, well, I burn it down. But like this is a place he like actually has friends at, supposedly. So it's not that he can like just attack one of the members for the map.
mm,
He has to
right.
like he has to win it back in one of the weekly card games, or more specifically, find a way to get it taken back without anything like really happening. If it's a friendly faction, it makes it much more difficult to get a hold of the map again. You know what I mean?
Right. I
Um,
love the idea of like that connection is already there and there's some level of like you lost it to the mayor, right? Or whatever.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like
yeah.
and you grew up together. So there's no combat is not you have to find another avenue to approach this issue. Yeah.
Yeah, either by winning by the skin of my actual gambling prowess, or by just
By becoming a house.
yeah, yeah. Well, the map leads to if I the map leads to the house becoming maybe. So,
Oh,
but
right.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well,
So
it could be
so
recursive. It could be a The only way to
Yeah.
get the map is to have the map.
Yeah. I mean, if I can find a way to become the town hall and its basement by extension, then I am doing exactly what I
Mm.
want. It's just now
Mm. God, this is like,
now
yeah. I love a
now I
good
can
like
get the map. Don't you?
built-in weird gonzo impossibilities to start.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
D6.
this shows so much of his like it shows some of the mania too, because like we're not talking about the depth of his soul or anything like that as much. It's just a like everything is about like how do I get this map? And anybody listening would be like, "That's what are you doing with your life?"
Yeah.
uh,
There's a version of the gambler that's just like, oh, just the one big one. All I need, it's only got to work once. So I can do all this, like, just all this crazy stuff. Like, it's only got to work once, and then I've made it, and then I'm the house.
yep,
It's like, that's not, I'm not quite sure that's how it works. It's like, nope, I'm doing it. Like, yeah,
yep,
manic. And I mean, that could fit well with the barbarian of just like, I mean, reckless is a gamble, pretty much, right? Like
yep, 100%.
that's playing the odds, and then yeah, just being like emotionally fueled, right? Rage can look like different things to different people.
Yeah. Or the even for the rogue, the mania of believing you're so good at gambling you couldn't have possibly just lost at a card game.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And being like, you don't understand. I counted the cards. I know what's going on. And it's like, dude, you made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Just live with it.
What do you mean? I have expertise.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You rolled a one. No, I didn't. You did. So good.
Give me a D6. This will be
Yeah.
an
Uh,
NPC that we
I
have some sort of
rolled a
relationship with.
four. I rolled a four and got Elias Braids, the street urchin gifted at three card Monty, illusions and evading authorities.
I love the plucky
Yep,
urchin. It's always somewhere in my campaign.
yep, yep. Um, I really like this. I want to go for um I know this is going to sound dumb. The reason to become the house is because of an off comment that Elias made one day of like one day we'll get enough money and then we can get our own place and then we'll be the house and no one can mess with us ever again. Um and him going like yes and then I'll be the house.
I love that so much
um
because there's like an innocence to that. It's just like
well,
I don't know, it makes me like the character more. They're not just like there's a fundamental misunderstanding.
yeah, yeah. And I
Like,
like
yeah.
since it's street urchin, I also like that Elias is the younger one. So you'd think Elias would be the more like innocent, and possibly is because Elias doesn't notice how potentially ruinous this guy is for everybody around
Mm, mm,
him.
mm.
Just this like this just this more wholesome story of like, and then one day we'll own the casinos, and then we'll have the good life. And then this insane person next to him going like, yes, we'll be the casinos. Then everyone has to gamble with us.
Well, there's this kind of like double bluff situation too, where like I don't realize that you have totally misconstrued what I said because what you're
Yes.
saying is insane. So
Yeah,
I
100%.
think we're saying the same thing.
Yes, 100%. I
And
love
I'm speaking, I guess, metaphorically, and you took it literally. And but we're using the same words to express
yeah,
two very very different concepts.
100%. And I love the idea of that because that can be why Elias helps with certain things. And it's like, oh, you need the map when we got, okay, well, I'll play in the game too. Like if the party gets enough money,
Mm.
we put two players into the game to maximize chances of getting it. And Elias is, of course, just like, well, this will help us make the money to be, buy a house.
Hmm. Yeah, just this like kid trying not to be homeless anymore, and this maniac being like, "Magic item, make me house now." Like, speaking of magic items, what you get on
Oh
the D10?
no.
This is potentially one of the only ones where number matters. But
The D10, I got the one. The
ooh, so that's
old copper coin.
yeah. So sometime if this is happening in character creation, I will often let a player roll twice. There's like
Yeah.
one and sometimes two or more trinkets. But let's dive into the old copper coin. What does that spark for you?
It's a memento of their first win and can be flipped to make decisions or look cool.
Mhm.
I love that. I love that it's a magical, non-magical item. It's a meaningful object more than a magical item, right?
And it
Yeah.
feels appropriate. It feels like
I
it fits our
I think it's very right for him.
yeah.
I think he flipped that coin right before he made that bet and followed the decision and followed it. And I think he follows it blindly. With that, not in the way like when someone says like, "Oh yeah, this has always been trustworthy to me," and they're sort of right, where it's like, "Yeah,
Mm.
there's never been like a big problem." I think he just says it's always led me the right way, and he just refuses to acknowledge every single time that he's failed with this coin, because he just makes bad decision after bad decision.
I like a magical item that's magical thinking, right? It's like
Yeah,
he placed the bet, he bet the map because the coin said so, and the coin is never wrong. Therefore, his childhood friend, the mayor, who doesn't have any desire to become a house and doesn't believe this map is anything but maybe a doodle on a napkin,
yeah. Well,
cheated
maybe.
because the coin is
Yeah,
never
yeah.
wrong. The coin is never wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Coin is never wrong. He had the winning hand. They had to have cheated. Best part is the mayor probably keeps it because the mayor probably took it out of one of two reasons. One is, oh my God, my friend is in such bad straits. Fine, I'll do this, and then he'll win and he'll have some extra money and everything will be maybe a little bit better. And then just like the flop happened and it was like four of a kind, and he was like, God damn it. Why did why did I accept this bet with my friend? Or the other one, which is he just thinks it'll lead to some magical trinket, and it's a talk piece that he can put on his mantle.
Mm.
Or even just like, some people come by and they're like, "What's that map? What's that map you've got?" And he's like, "Oh, it's some story about turning into a house. It's really quite interesting." It's just a talk show piece for him. It doesn't mean anything. Like you said, it's there's reasons, but they're not the same.
Yeah, and I like the idea, like the first take of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if the this person's friend for whatever reason doesn't like value the map either because they think it's bunk or because it's
That was
nothing more but like
yeah, yeah,
a conversation starter for them. But like presumably they would have matched not with another magical map to some treasure, but like to hard coin, right? Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
they acknowledged they bought into the fantasy of this manic character that like yeah this is super valuable and like
Yep,
pushed in gold coins to match it, willing to give them to this poor deluded
exactly.
uh rogue who makes their choices by flipping a coin. I'm not giving you another magic item because I like that too much.
No,
Um
I love the copper coin.
okay,
The
good.
instant you were like, "You're allowed to roll again," my head went, "What? No, only what's rolled first."
Only coin. Well, it's good. You get it's a twofer. It's a twofer. Because in character creation, in some systems, you can reroll ones. Twos are funny. Twos are like not every table has a trinket at two or not. So that's always like, oh, you did if the two hurts you, then it's kind of feels like your own fault. Okay, so we're gonna switch hats here. I feel like we have a very good idea of what this
Yeah.
character would be like to role play. So we're gonna go from the player side to the dungeon master side of the equation and kind of build adventure around this.
Okay. Cool.
Um, this rogue is feeling right. I don't know. I do like the barbarian though. Maybe to be multi-class.
I think rogue and barbarian can both work, but it changes like what the party's like circumstances of meeting kind of mean.
Oh,
The I think the barbarian when if the barbarian wants to become the house, it's I don't want to be like too assumptive, but if it's a barbarian for me, I would think that the reason would be because the house is super good looking and he's like, oh man, I could just be a giant beautiful house all the time. Let's do that. um
it does suggest like int as a dump stat a little. Well, that's one way to get there. That's not the only way to get there.
no, there's lots
Um,
of other options because you can
yeah.
be a smart barbarian. There's nothing that like limits that.
I like
Um
Conan the Librarian is like my favorite
yeah,
weird
yeah,
funny archetype.
yeah.
Um,
Let's see he's got let's see if he's a barbarian type, lots of fighting. Um, I wonder, does it stay the mayor? Well, I guess barbarian doesn't need to be. I always think of the barbarian as the guy that's from the tribe, but you can be just a brawler. Take the barbarian class.
Yeah, the like a historical barbarian, right? Just from the
Yeah.
wild is like the Outlander background or whatever. But like,
I mean, I'm not even thinking that. I'm thinking you could go barbarian in your job outside of you gamble as a side thing, and your job is like you're one of the local boxers or something like that.
mhm,
Because when you rage, oh, half damage on whatever punch I just took.
right. I think it's just
Sweet.
like how do you like the defining feature is like you go into a fugue state
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
when
yeah.
things get real. Right? Like
Yep, 100%.
like I
It's
don't
a
know.
good few.
So that could be, that's the classically could be like anger and right, but like your emotion takes over and you don't feel things as much and typically heads get busted.
Yep, yep, yep.
Um, all right, so we're gonna go. You can roll 4d6s. You can roll a d6 one at a time. Doesn't really matter. But more dice, more fun half the time.
Okay, more dice, more fun. So two, three, and fourth one's in there. Okay, we're gonna go three and then one
That's fair.
because the fourth one got stuck in. So I've got them all in a little drinking horn from medieval times.
Hmm.
So okay, so 6, 5, 4, and then
Ooh,
six.
6, 5, 4, 6. Six, five,
Yep,
four, six. Rolling hot. 6, 5, 4,
yep.
6. All right. So that first six is going to be our antagonistic organization. Some sort of faction that does not think too highly of our delusional barbarian with sneak attack
Yeah, or rogue. It's
or rogue with
maybe a
rage.
mix of both. Yeah, it's somewhere in the. I think rogue works a little better for the town we're sort of talking
It's
about,
your,
but it
your
doesn't
character,
matter.
baby. Sorry to push you.
Yeah. No, no,
Um,
no, I got no worries about it. I think I would pick rogue, but rogue barbarian is good too.
I
The
mean, it feels the gambler feels more naturally clicks in.
Yeah, yeah.
So what'd you get? What do we say? Six.
So it's number
Antagonistic
6 was
organization.
the Backstretch Brigade. They work races and jousts, sell insider knowledge, and are not above cheating. I mean, obviously, they're the mayor. He's been gotten by the Backstretch Brigade. I know about them. The whole town knows about them. Everybody knows about. Nobody knows about these people. They're a good organization. Only this guy, because he's like deep into the gambling world, does he understand what they are.
Oh. So you're saying
Uh,
so we have insider knowledge, or we this is another level of like delusion where like we're blaming the people who work at medieval times because we lost a bunch of money there.
it's both. This is a real organization. They do these things. Like
Hmm.
working races and jousts is a thing. It's like that's definitely something that can happen. But like when he learned about them, he like vastly overstated what that importance was in the world because to him gambling is like everything. So it,
Hmm.
it became this like watch out for everything in the world. And so the fact that the mayor cheated his childhood friend cheated him on a game on this game for the one item that his friend knew he wanted, that he cared about the most, and would normally never gamble away if not for the fact that he was definitely going to win. That shows that the brigade is so powerful that they've even gotten their mitts into the mayor. And only because we are best friends will I not take matters into my own hands. Also, he's the mayor, and the guards would be angry about it, and the whole town's against me, but he's my friend. I definitely believe that.
God, I love this like Charlie in the mailroom meme moment of like it goes straight to the top, man, and the camera pans to like a dude literally shoveling horse shit. It's like they're
Yeah,
pulling the strings.
yeah, 100%, 100%.
I,
Um,
I like that a lot.
Yeah, they do have a level of power because they can do the jousts, which is the knights. So
Hmm.
that means that nobility has some kind of like level of take and things like that. But it's not like it's one of those in my mind. It's one of those things where they're like the mayor doesn't care about us. Like we're a national organization essentially. So
Hmm.
the mayor doesn't mean anything to us. But yeah, I think that's
That's good. That's very good. All right,
Horrible.
you got or horrible. Well,
Yeah.
there's some overlap there. Uh,
The
um,
horrible things are the best things.
give
uh
me. You got a 5 for our rival and enemy and or enemy. This is
yeah,
an NPC.
cool. So the five was Ron Underwood, a corrupt town guard, has loaded dice, bad breath, and anger issues.
Mm.
This is where the rogue barbarian dichotomy comes into play. Ron is the other half of this equation and also wants the map to become the house. And that might not be true, but it's definitely true in my mind. Um,
The one person who actually believes you is
yeah,
competing is now your enemy because they are also trying to obtain it. Like,
yep, 100%. Ron Underwood, Corrupt Town. I like to think that the thing stated in the tag is real. So he is corrupt. He's probably I'd say do you think he's probably a member of the Backstretch Brigade, or like at
uh,
least he's on the take from them?
but yeah, he's on the take or he's getting info
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah,
them.
yeah.
He's pushing his weight around with the whatever the jockeys and furriers. I don't have a lot of horse language.
Yep,
Um,
100%.
mm-hmm.
Yep,
And like the
loaded
idea
dice.
I like the idea too of like, all right, if we have a roguish barbarian or a barbarian, if we have a barbarianish rogue, right? Because
Yeah,
you don't have to be mechanically a barbarian to have rage issues, right? Or to
right,
be
right,
or to like
100%. Yeah,
navigate by this emotional fugue state because like you flipped a coin and this is now your new reality and you're a little in your little bubble.
yeah, yep, yep, yep.
So like the inverse function of that of like having this like roguish barbarian, right? So like all those like tropey like int bad easy to be like misled thing, right? Like that suits a corrupt town guard to a degree too. And like the I just love this concept of like they also want the map because they're the one kind of person who will believe you.
Yep,
It's
100%.
it's a valuable object worth coveting.
Yeah, and I don't know how much control we have over the rivals and enemies bit, but I like the idea that the loaded dice, Ron also will roll them to make decisions. But
Perfect.
because they're loaded, it just comes up the way Ron wants, and he then he like kicks your teeth in, or she kicks your teeth, whatever.
The dark yeah, just like the dark mirror of the character who's already like taking a weird gonzo-y character and then like putting them in a funhouse mirror to make them even weirder
Yeah.
is good. To answer your little interjection there, we have absolute control over everything.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know
this
how you
is
wanted to fully do.
wide open.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh
Cool then. Yeah, definitely go with the loaded dice
I'm
being the
currently I am finishing this and I'm working on layout and like re-examining, finalizing slash re-examining every decision I've made so far.
right.
And I am really, really, really leaning towards putting this like the content, the tables, putting that material first after like a little blurb, like little introduction, all of the meat of the book, and then the instructions at the back. Like I want you to see this thing and like decide for yourself like how it works for you
Right.
and then present you with a bunch of different ways you might be able to use it. So like a lot of the times I tell people like don't let the dice dictate the answer. If you like, I don't know, something else jumps out at you, or you read the thing that I said and you're like, that's okay, but it would be better if like cool. That's also
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
function of this of a thing like this.
What
Uh
about is this for print or is it just online?
both it's gonna be PDF and print on demand, yeah.
May I suggest then putting some of that on the blurb and back? Because I know you only get like a paragraph, but just putting the lines of like this is to help you make your decisions, all that kind of thing. That might.
I think the front mat. I mean, it might be a blurb on the
Yeah.
back
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
too, of like because there's a million ways to use the thing. So I think that's like the back cover.
Definitely.
but like the not instructions is like do what you like, make this into like
Yep.
I have people like
100%.
using this to make different kinds of characters and different kind of campaigns for different kinds of systems, but like I've had a couple of people use it as like a game in and of itself, which is essentially what this is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
I mean, the in my thoughts, one of the first things that I'm thinking of is because you have these like antagonistic organizations, rivals and enemies, evocative looking, all that. You can just like parties in a new town, rip that bad boy open, pick the first rivals and enemies you find, roll a
mm,
d6, and it's like, all right, you guys, somebody messes with you, and like you, and then there's playing cards left behind, like for the croupier or whatever, and the party's like, who, what? What do you mean playing cards are left behind? Okay, wizard. Find object. Find person who owns object.
mhm,
Go get him,
mhm.
boy. What do you mean they stole our boots?
Yeah, and that's how I use this the most, right? Like
Yeah,
it's funny, it's not what most people respond to as hard, but like again, it's that open world sandbox. Like I built myself tools to make it so that any rock you kick over, like you go anywhere, do anything, and something relevant and connected will happen.
yeah,
And the easiest, like the deepest way to hook in your narrative or your world to the characters is through the characters, right? So like focusing in on these background archetypes, like you go to a new town, it's like, oh, you know this guy, or like you've never met this person, but they are like the dark mirror inverse of you, right? Like
100%.
if I do a decent enough job describing Ron Underwood here, our rogue character, if they're immersed, is going to have some sort of response to this person who's just like the dark version of them, who's also
Yeah,
dreaming of becoming a house, inexplicably somehow. Um, so yeah, let's get into like the combat-y side of things, perhaps. But like the D6 is going to give us an
yep,
evocative location. Actually, you rolled already. 4.
yeah. Roll a 4. The diced tower, of course. Ruins of a gigantic structure now half sunken below the ground. That's got to be where the map leads, right?
We think so.
Yeah. That's gotta be. That's gotta be
It's got to be it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Flip the coin. Let's find out. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. I don't know where this location is, but I know once I get the map, it'll tell me where it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And yeah,
and
and
that
I love the idea of like taking a literal thing and making it. I mean, taking a metaphorical thing and making it literal, and now taking like a literal, like the dice tower, like instantly in my mind was like, okay, here's an adventure location, and like we can map this out. It's like it doesn't exist. It's just it's just the daydream that we've come up with to navigate our
well,
whole.
that's what's even better is it can exist and it can be a real thing, but it's not necessarily the real thing that he's looking for. And it is like they'll arrive and the party will see like, oh yeah, that's not a tower, that's like a house. But like they'll be rational and they'll be like, hey, why does it look like the sides have pips on them? And then he'll just go, the dice tower, and like run in, and they'll just be like, oh no.
I'm getting real Don Quixote vibes now too. It's like this.
Don Quixote has so much more honor than this person.
Right, right. I'm gonna make Don Quixote, but there's no without a code, no
Yeah,
chivalry, just for self gain, and I want to become rich and become a house. Like
yeah, yeah.
what? Oh,
Just the madness.
suck it, Cervantes. Let's go.
Hmm.
Uh, give me our final D6 was a 6. Now this is another one
Yeah.
that is often tiered. So what do we get for what do we get for
We
thematic
got the
monster?
6, which was Chance Fire, the evil dragon that is fond of treasure, wagers, and playing with their food.
Oh.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, this might be what's inside what we perceive to be the diced tower.
That's very true. I like the idea. Oh man, I don't know exactly how to implement it, but this feels like one that I would hold in my back pocket
Mm,
and just bring out at some point and have it be that like the party is that room where like the party's doomed. It's like we're in a pit and the dragon is standing above us and it's just talking to us. And then like that's that moment for the gambler to like, I challenge you to a game of cards. And then the dragon just stops and like looks down and the party's like, you've killed us. You've killed us by saying these words. And he's like, how did you know that I'm quite fond of the game of the hand? And then
yes.
like pulls the gambler out and forces him into a table. It's like
That's
the
yeah.
party's like, Are we being saved because of our insane gambling friend?
Yeah, that's perfect. Especially if we're like, because like we floated a couple options, but like I feel like none of them were really charisma based.
No,
So,
definitely
so
not.
like I got this one, guys. Like, oh no,
Yeah,
I'll
the
negotiate with the dragon.
the like one time the gambler comes due as a like as a referential point is the party's like, what do you mean this is what? And even uh you know where the map leads? To Chancefire.
Mm,
Because Chancefire might know how to get it done.
hmm I mean, I think an ancient dragon has well, it depends on how you're doing it, but has true polymorph, right? I think that's maybe what we're talking about.
I mean, nothing in there
Uh,
says he's ancient. He's just evil.
right.
But yeah, but that could be a very, I think that could be a very great idea. Is like the map just leads to chance fire, and that's why the map might be maybe the map is like slightly magical, so it like always has a route to chance fire essentially.
Mm.
And that's why most people just think it's silly and dumb because they're just like, oh look, it's a map that keeps changing where it wants to go. That's dumb. And the gambler is like, no, it must lead. So what I want. Um,
And it's just it's a ruse crafted by
yeah,
this dragon to get adventurers to come and die
yep,
to entertain him and gamble and then get eaten.
yeah, 100%. Gives the rest of the party a lot of like, okay, so while the dragon's distracted with him for the next hour and a half, let's try to figure something out.
Yeah, perfect. All right, one last D20. Oftentimes by the time we get down here, we don't need it. But it's always good to have a ton of plot hooks ready.
They're always good. Oh no, 19. The
Uh,
secret BBEG loves to gamble in disguise because they can read minds and always win.
that could I see a couple connections there. What do you did that say anything to you?
I mean, that gives me another horrific conspiracy theory that makes no sense.
Even better. Go on. Go on.
That's the mayor. That's
That's the
obvious.
mayor. That's the mayor,
The
right?
mayor
Like
is the mayor is not the mayor. It was the BBEG in disguise, and he's and the BBEG is of course part of the backstretch brigade. He's the head of the backstretch brigade, and of course this is just the assumptions of the gambler, and he's putting pressure on the mayor to say that he's doing this. This to say that he was there that night and won the gambling on the map.
it's yeah, it's what because like players are always in some meta level are expecting the old Scooby Doo, right? And
Yeah.
like you can kind of short circuit that by like, no, you've known this person for 30 years. Um, but then to like have it built into the character side of things, it's like you expect because either either this coin is not magical and perfectly inscrutably
Please.
omniscient, right? Which is not possible. Or or perhaps to be fair, perhaps your childhood friend has been replaced by some sort of doppelganger changeling type
Yep.
evil person, and they knew that you had consulted the coin and we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and therefore arrange things unfairly to get you to lose this map. So,
Yeah.
like, yeah, the idea of it's like, yeah, again, you can use these things as like a bunch of different ways. So, like, this is like not even a rumor, but like a D20 delusion your character may suffer from.
I
Like,
like the idea that this is the gambler's like final nail in the coffin. Was that once you fight Chancefire
mm,
and the party deals with Chancefire, the gambler is like, no, I know what happened. The map wasn't real because because the leader of the backstretch brigade, of course, he has the map because he would have taken it from the mayor. So he was pretending to be the mayor during and just you can see the layers of just like it's like no, it has to be that it's that what's that thing of they talk about with certain it's not like insanities and things like that, but it's this idea of like if you're wrong, and then instead of trying to like uproot the premise and figure out what went on, you're just like, no, the premise has to be right. So therefore, the way I pruned it must be wrong, and so I just checked and changed things. And I like the
Um,
idea of that's his immediate response is like the BBEG is the leader of the backstretch brigade. He has the map. We need to go get the map from him now. And after we
mhm.
fought Chance Fire, the rest of the party gets to sit there and be like, why are we doing this? Do we really want to work with this man anymore?
Yeah, it's an interesting. Yeah, circling back to like trusted in groups, right? Like this is
Yeah.
advanced D&D.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wouldn't
yeah, 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 yeah,
show
yeah.
two
This is
adventurers with
madness.
like my guy's insane and is going to try to get the players to run into a dragon den because he thinks it's the mayor. The whole like no, no. we all
Nope.
gotta we need consent here.
This
But oh
is
boy, would it be fun?
I think groups would be really I think if you open with like this man is insane, you should listen to nothing he says. That like when I've done things like that, usually one of the party members responds with, so we're gonna do exactly what you say, and then looks at the rest of the party and goes, right guys? And everyone's like, yeah, sure, this should be funny. And then they get to see the horrific because that's that moment like at the end there where he's explaining the BBEG. It reminds me of Indiana Jones. There was a young Indiana Jones show, and they were trying to get this
Oh man.
was one item, and every time they would go, it would be another map piece that led to another place that totally has the item.
Hmm.
And so they would keep doing that. And after like three or four of them, Indiana Jones and the other guy are sitting on an island, and he's like, "Well, it tells us where to go, so we'll just go there next." And Indiana Jones is like, "No, this is crazy. It's always going to be another thing that swears it's the thing. We need to stop." And he's like, no, no, we'll find it one day, Indy. You've got to trust me. And he's like, no.
Yeah, this is why I only do movies. I don't like this episodic. uh,
Oh, it's funny. Um,
Good
but
stuff.
no,
All
I
right.
love that. I love that idea, and I love that also being like the truth is that there is a secret BBEJ who likes to gamble and can read minds. And maybe the truth is that the gambler is that, but he doesn't realize it.
Ooh, that's
Because that would explain the insane paranoia of like of that he's got this like because he knows all the times that people doubt him and
mm,
question and
mm.
like
I love the
mm,
idea of like an accidental. I had a paladin in an earlier campaign who like didn't know that they were doing magic, right? I like the just again, just because you're a barbarian doesn't mean your rage has to look one way, or you can't have rage if you're a rogue.
yeah.
So
You
like
just say
yeah,
you're focused up. You're like, I know my
Ty
targets.
Timora. There's a I just forgot her name. Who's the butterfly goddess in Galar in Pathfinder Second Edition? Is like my favorite. Desna. Because it
Oh,
like it's
yeah.
kind of meta. It's not meta gamey, but like meta like wink wink. We're playing a game with dice, whatever. Like I love
Yeah, yeah,
crap
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that. But like if you're accident like you're a cleric of the change bringer the luck out of someone's talking to you through this coin and it's whatever one of those divination spells. It's like the more you check it, the less likely it is going to work, and he's doing it all the time, so it's only like 10% of the time you're actually getting
Yep.
good results. um and yeah, you're hearing voices, right? And like
Yeah.
maybe they're coming from other people's minds, maybe they're coming from the gods or some celestial vehicle. Like just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you, right? Like
Exactly. Uh, so much.
I
It's
love
so good.
that was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
eagerly await your research, and I think a lot of people are just yeah we're studious sort. Like again, there's a lot of overlapping communities, but many of
Yep.
us are interested in
I
analysis of the community.
I I I am partially mentally preparing myself because the fact of the matter is
Mm,
the the community like you said is very studious and also like that's part of what made the OGL thing goes kind of like poorly as it went was the like they just you throw out a legal document and we're like, yeah, this will be fine. And everybody was like, these are all the problems in this legal document. Like this isn't a real legal document. It's more like a we are in charge, you have to do whatever we say or
mm,
else kind of thing. Like people immediately like that. So I'm definitely like preparing myself for if anybody is if anybody takes the time to read through it, like there are going to be holes and people are going to see them, and it's like, all right, well, like understand full, like that's just life, is like you do your best and you hope you hit on what's happening as best as possible. But the fact of the matter is, like, someone with a greater mind or a greater amount of like study and understanding of language, or any of a particular set of factors, they're gonna see something and be like, oh, hey, this is like, this could use tweaking here, this
Mm.
needs more. And it's like, gotta be humble. You gotta be humble, gotta accept, gotta be like, okay, I see. And also have the ability to see when that might be like a misunderstanding, where it's like, okay, well, what I meant to say was something like this, and then that kind
Mm-hmm.
of fixes things. But
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, it's gonna be really, it's gonna be really interesting.
Well, you are on the internet now, so that'll be a nice little dip your toe in the water,
Yep.
so people potentially disagreeing with you or whatever. But
Yep. Yep.
it's a pretty good space. We
Oh yeah.
the vertical table community is a small subset of the TTRPG community. We're in our own little pocket, and like, yeah, it's mostly good people. I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah.
anyone's coming after you.
No, and in no way did I mean it as I didn't mean it as coming after me. It's how to put it, people can, even when given with good constructive criticism, react extremely poorly. And I don't want to react extremely poorly to good constructive criticism. I want to be able to react in the best way possible. And that's more of a like, I'm mentally preparing myself to try to be able to do that, as opposed to, in no way do I think other people are necessarily the problem, because the stuff happens, and for some people that's like, how could this possibly be, this is a terrible moment, and other people it's like water off a duck's back. It's like, yeah, that was
Mm,
bad, but we got to move forward, let's keep going. And
mm.
I much prefer to, as always, be able to be in the, that, yeah, this might suck, but let's keep moving, we got to move forward, we got to do our best.
And that's a beautiful approach to things, because it's not it's the scientific method, right? It's the way
Yeah.
it's the enlightenment. It's like
Yeah.
how we've
All
achieved everything that happened in the last 500 years is like that openness to being wrong, right? Like
Yeah. 100%.
the understanding that you don't know everything from the jump, and that you're going to go figure stuff out, and like other people's input is interesting and important,
Yeah.
and going to help you
All
make a more informed decision. Yeah.
Yeah. All that is false must be cut. Anything that resulted in pain and destruction for others must be recognized. And you
Yes.
do your best and you move forward. But you you got to burn those bridges if they got to burn.
Yeah. Yeah. So if people have 3 years of experience running
Yep.
and or playing D&D 5e TTRPGs, how can they help you uh learn and grow your and participate in your study here?
Yep. If anyone's interested, go to matthew.middleton at woodbury.edu. That's WOODBURY at edu. And then Matthew is with two T, so MATTHEW, and Middleton is like half a ton, so the middle weight of a ton. So MIDDLETON, Matthew.middleton at woodbury.com. I believe you said there that email in the description, if that's right. Yeah, down
Yeah.
there.
Downstairs will be that spelled out.
Absolutely. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be 3 years of experience. That's just the assumption of like one or two long-term campaigns in quotes. The rest is just like, have you done a bunch? We're looking for, like, let's say a dozen mini campaigns that probably do it, maybe 18 or so. And even then, like if you're just a player, like we can get information from you just being a player. It's gonna be, it's gonna be fine. I assume the vast majority of people, seeing as how there's one DM for every about 4 players, I assume there's more players that have this kind of experience for some reason. And I assume most, if not all, DMs basically have that experience because, unless you're absolutely new at DMing, like forever DMing is a thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Um,
yeah, and we just the way it works is you say you're interested, we set up a time. The average has been 2 hours, but if we get into some rapport, it can extend out real far. If you're extremely efficient, we can be less time. And there's just a bunch of questions, and it's very generic. It's stuff that has to do with you being a DM, stuff that has to do with you being a player, and there's like one like question set that has to do with the OGL in specific. But
yeah.
and It's
some
very
some
chill, very casual, as much as I can make.
some subjects turn out to be more verbose and
Yeah,
opinionated than others.
yeah.
Uh,
And then anonymity is I'm putting everything down as like I'm putting them down by numbers basically. So you'll just be part of a number pile essentially. And if you and you will be recorded, but I have an option for altering the voice if you want to require that. And that's it. It's just, anybody who's interested, that would be great. And if you're not, hey, go have fun. That's 2 hours you could be spending gaming, right?
yeah. I should say this is pre-recorded, and
Yeah.
in theory will be up indefinitely. So is there a like a time window where after
I'm
which point people should not email you to participate in this study?
Let's see. I'd say probably around August or September
Hmm.
of this year would probably be the latest point. But I might we'll see what happens. Like originally we were near the end of recordings kind of at this point, but then we just decided to expand them. So it's like, hey, just keep sending them in and we'll keep kind of working and stuff like that.
I threw up
We'll
all
do our
your data
best.
and you guys had to go back to the to the blackboard and figure out. Well, I don't know if that guy's an anomaly or what the hell that was, but we gotta do some more research here. This is not adding up anymore.
No, no, nothing like that. It
Okay.
was just say, hey, we can keep doing this sort of thing. And right now we're at the as far as the project goes, right now we're at like the coding stage. So when anything that we get as a interview will pretty much immediately go into being a part of the coding, and we'll just see what happens. And I, I try to get as many interviews done as I can during a day, but I'm also a unfortunately very weak person individually. So I'm just after like two or three, I'll be like, oh man, I'm so tired.
Oh, well, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But I'd love to be like a robot and just be like interview, 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 but just
Yeah, they got
yeah,
robots that do that. It's less fun. All right, man. Well,
100%.
thank you very much for agreeing to switch sides and be interviewed.
Absolutely, 100%.
And yeah, again, just like fascinated with the whole approach to things, and yeah, if it's before August, September 2024, we should say, then
Yep.
yeah, reach out to Matthew. And if it's after that by a good amount, yeah, go see what the results are and what he's working on next.
Yeah. And maybe if it's close to then, email and I can tell you, like, oh, we're closed or no, we extended it again. Because
Mm.
we'll see how things work out. Uh, but yeah, I hope everyone out there has a wonderful time. Thank you very much for having me on here. I hope everything goes wonderfully for you. Let's make this year great.
All right, thank you. Everyone out there, be kind, have fun. Yeah, participate in academic surveys because somebody's going to, right? So might as
Yep.
well get your opinion in there. Yeah, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Cool. Have a great one. Bye.